Chapter 135. Gu Mingzhu, who was watching from afar, finally realized that something was amiss. She put down her crossed arms and frowned. That's not right. Chu Luiyue is a level 2 Xian master. Logically speaking, she should be able to control a dozen heaven and earth force at the same time. Why is she still continuing? Her movements are smooth and natural, as if she's very relaxed. As time passed, the Xian formation in front of Chu Luiyue gradually became more complicated. Gu Mingfeng's eyelids twitched. No wonder he felt that the Xian formation looked weird. It was just a rough outline. After Chu Luiyue slowly filled it up, it finally looked normal. Even from a distance, Gu Mingfeng could already faintly feel the power contained in it. He was even more shocked. Didn't Chu Luiyue say that she's only a level 2 Xian master? This Xian formation's level is obviously higher. What is Chu Luiyue planning to do? Compared to Gu Mingfeng, who didn't know much about Xian formations, Gu Mingzhu, who was also a Xian master, was already stunned. She could clearly see that Chu Luiyue's Xian formation had already reached level 3. However, Chu Luiyue didn't seem to have any intention of stopping. Could it be that she wants to continue? How can she do that? Boom, boom, boom. Mu Hongyu and Xin, who had been fighting with the golden mane bear for a long time. Both of them were injured, and their strength was almost depleted. The golden mane bear was already furious after being toyed with by the two of them. It kept attacking them violently. Lu Yu. Are you done? Mu Hongyu was careless and was affected by the force. She fell out pathetically, and her face and body were covered in scratches. Chu Luiyue stared at the Xian formation in front of her. Just a few more minutes. Mu Hongyu gritted her teeth. A few minutes wasn't long, but the key was that they were facing a golden mane bear that was far stronger than them. Every minute and every second was torture. However, she still agreed without hesitation. Okay. She couldn't care less about her injuries and immediately stood up. Hongyu, move aside. Xin suddenly roared. Mu Hongyu's heart skipped a beat. She looked over and saw that Xin had suddenly charged towards the golden mane bear. Mu Hongyu's heart suddenly jumped. Xin had a strong body and was considered very tall and sturdy among them. However, when he stood in front of the golden mane bear, he instantly looked much smaller. Did he want to die? Facing the attack head-on was extremely dangerous. The golden mane bear looked at Xin who was charging in front of it. Its eyes were burning with anger, and it suddenly opened its mouth to spit out a ball of red flames. Damn it! This guy still has tricks up his sleeve. Xin cursed inwardly as he lowered his body to avoid the fireball. However, the high temperature still made him feel a burning sensation on his face. But then, he pressed his palm against the ground and crawled toward the golden mane bear. An axe appeared in his hand and he swung it at the golden mane bear. Clang! The axe fell, but the golden mane bear was unharmed. Xin felt as if his axe had landed on an extremely hard metal rock. The impact caused the web between his thumb and forefinger to split open, and he could not feel half of his arm. He knew that this was not good. This guy's physical strength was stronger than he had imagined. However, this time, the golden mane bear was completely enraged. It roared angrily, and its powerful aura almost shattered Xin eardrums. Roar! At the same time, a large palm slapped towards his head. If he was hit, he would definitely die. Xin held his breath and ran half a circle around the golden mane bear's thigh. He ran behind it and avoided the attack with great difficulty. The golden mane bear's speed and strength were extremely strong. Only in close combat could Xin have the upper hand. However, this situation did not last for long. After failing to catch him twice, the golden mane bear gave up on him and turned to charge towards Chu Luiyue. It already felt a little uneasy and had to stop Chu Luiyue immediately. Xinhu panicked and went forward to hug the golden mane bear's thigh. The golden mane bear swung its leg and easily flung him away. He landed heavily on the ground. Pfft. After being hit repeatedly, Xinhu's internal organs were almost shattered. The combination of new injuries and old injuries caused him to spit out a mouthful of blood. His breathing instantly weakened. However, just as he took a step forward, another person pounced on him. It was Mu Hongyu. At this moment, her strength was completely exhausted. She could only use the most clumsy and dangerous method like Xinhu. Lu Yu. Quick! She shouted anxiously. Her throat was already filled with the thick smell of blood. At this moment, the Xian formation in front of Chu Luiyue was finally completed. Her face was pale, and her body was trembling because she had forcefully created a formation that was higher than her current strength. It was as if she would collapse at any moment, but her eyes were as resolute as before. Gu Mingfeng. Help! Just as Chu Luiyue spoke, Gu Mingfeng immediately took action. With a push of his palm, strong force flowed into the Xian formation. Buzz! In an instant, the Xian formation shone brightly. The Xian formation, which was originally the size of a chessboard, expanded rapidly after Gu Mingfeng's force flowed in. Chu Luiyue stared at it and merged the two's strength bit by bit. In a moment, the Xian formation had expanded to the height of a person. Light flowed, and there was a faint pressure. Chu Luiyue felt as if all the strength in his body had been emptied. He was extremely weak, and his vision was turning black. From the corner of his eyes, the golden mane bear impatiently flung Mu Hongyu away and raised its leg, intending to stomp on her. The force of its kick was as strong as 1,000 catties. Mu Hongyu lay on the ground, covered in blood. She no longer had the strength to move. Seeing the huge bear paw coming towards her, she closed her eyes in despair. Chu Luiyue clenched his teeth. Go! Boom! The Xian formation suddenly exploded. In an instant, countless rays of light shot out like a rushing river and went straight for the golden mane bear. A vast pressure instantly enveloped it. The golden mane bear sensed the danger, and panic flashed across its face. However, that terrifying power had already landed on its body. Its huge body seemed to be drowned by the rushing river. Everyone could only see countless silver lines twisting together. It locked the golden mane bear in place. Seeing this, Gu Mingzhu finally couldn't help but exclaim, "Fourth grade wood origin formation." Chu Luiyue actually used a Xian formation of this level. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 136. The streams of light continued to tighten. The golden mane bear kept struggling, but it was futile. It couldn't break free no matter how hard it tried. Not long after, its movements gradually slowed down. Its angry roars also gradually weakened. In the end, it stopped moving and didn't make any more sounds. Only the ground was covered in blood. It dyed a large area red, and it looked especially bloody and terrifying. When the light completely dissipated, everyone was finally able to see the scene inside. The golden mane bear, which was originally burly, had lost a lot of weight. Its body was covered in wounds, and it looked strangely twisted. The blood on the ground came from its body. Mu Hongyu only took one look before she couldn't help but turn her head away and retch. Xinhu was barely holding on, but the last bit of color had faded from his pale face. Only Gu Mingfeng was better. When he saw this scene, his eyelids only twitched. His heart was finally at ease. After solving this thorny problem, they were finally safe. But, however, more problems were quietly arising. He couldn't help but look at Chu Luiyue. He saw that the girl's expression was still very calm. Apart from her pale face from using the Xian formation, there wasn't a trace of emotion in her eyes. It was as if she didn't mind the terrifying scene in front of her. That's right. She was the one who caused this scene. If she hadn't used the Xian formation to kill the golden mane bear, they wouldn't even know if they were still alive. What kind of person was she? How could she? Gu Mingfeng pursed his lips. He had long known that Chu Luiyue wasn't ordinary. However, after today's battle, he realized that she was even more unfathomable than he had imagined. After confirming that the golden mane bear was dead, Chu Luiyue finally heaved a sigh of relief. The moment she relaxed, exhaustion overwhelmed her. She didn't even have the energy to move her fingers. She said to Gu Mingfeng, although it's a pity that its body was destroyed, its core of essence should still be around. You can go and retrieve it. Gu Mingfeng shook his head. You killed it. It should belong to you. Chu Luiyue thought that if she wasn't so tired, she would have gone to get it herself. The blood ferret that had disappeared earlier appeared once again. It skipped towards the golden mane bear's mouth. With a swipe of its claws, it easily found a faint red essence pill. It wiped it clean with its tail like it was a treasure and returned to Chu Luiyue. It held it with its two paws and presented it to Chu Luiyue as if it was presenting a treasure. Its round eyes stared at Chu Luiyue without blinking, and its face was saying, "Praise me." Chu Luiyue could not help but laugh. This little thing ran faster than anyone else when it was in trouble, and when it was safe, it came back to curry favor. What a good scheme. However, this quick-wittedness was not annoying. Chu Luiyue accepted the gift. After thinking about it, he decided to give it to Mu Hongyu later. Thinking of this, she walked over to Mu Hongyu and helped her up. "Hongyu, how are you?" Mu Hongyu thought that she was going to die today. She did not expect to be saved by Chu Luiyue at the last moment. She could not help but feel grateful and thankful. She endured the pain and wiped the blood off her face. "I'm fine. It's just a flesh wound. I'll be fine after some rest. If it wasn't for you, you and Xin who risked your lives to stop it. That's why we won." Chu Luiyue shook her head gently. Her gaze lingered on Mu Hongyu's shoulder for a moment. It looked like she had broken a bone. "Sit down and rest first. I'll help you set the bone later." Mu Hongyu realized that Gu Mingfeng had seen through her and laughed bitterly. "Your eyes are too sharp." Chu Luiyue did not mention that she had already checked her pulse when she helped her up. Actually, this was not the most important thing. The most serious injury on Mu Hongyu's body was actually her internal injury. After Chu Luiyue settled her down, she went to check on Xin-Hu's condition. Xin-Hu was in a worse state than Mu Hongyu. He was already injured, and he had risked his life to fight. It was simply one disaster after another. His left forearm was fractured, and two of his ribs were broken. His condition was not optimistic. Fortunately, Xin-Hu was rough to begin with. Although he was in pain, he could endure it. Chu Luiyue set his bone first. He was in so much pain that his forehead was covered in sweat, but he did not make a sound. When Chu Luiyue finished bandaging him, he even grinned from ear to ear. "Lu Yu, you're really good. Even a fourth-grade fiend is no match for you. Your Xian formation is definitely not a second-grade one, right? You previously said that you were a second-grade mystic cultivator. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I would have been fooled by you." Chu Luiyue smiled. "I'm indeed a second-grade mystic cultivator. Without Gu Mingfeng's help, I wouldn't have been able to use it." Xin-Hu felt that something was amiss, but he could not put his finger on it. He could only say, "In any case, you're very impressive. I think you're much more impressive than those haughty mystic cultivators in the academy." In the past, the entire Imperial city called her a good-for-nothing. Little did they know that she was the true top-notch genius. Upon hearing this, Chu Luiyue paused and looked behind him. He had actually forgotten that there was someone else here. Gu Mingzhu. Sensing Chu Luiyue looking at her, Gu Mingzhu shuddered and felt a trace of fear in her heart. The scene just now was truly too frightening. Her stomach churned for a long time before she finally calmed down. However, the raging waves in her heart could not be calmed down for a long time. Chu Luiyue could actually use a 4th-grade mystic formation. Didn't they say that she had just started cultivating not long ago? Didn't they say that she was only a 2nd-grade mystic cultivator? Then how could she explain everything just now? What do you want to do? Gu Mingzhu asked in a trembling voice. Nothing. I just want to settle the score with you now that the matter has been resolved. As Chu Luiyue spoke, he looked at Gu Mingfeng with a grin. Gu Mingfeng, do you mind helping me keep an eye on her? Gu Mingzhu raised her brows and shrieked. How dare you? Gu Mingfeng nodded without a word and walked toward Gu Mingzhu. He took out a rope and tied her up tightly. Although Gu Mingzhu was a 3rd-grade mystic cultivator, the continuous escape had already exhausted her strength. Right now, she was no match for a martial artist like Gu Mingfeng. She was so angry that her face flushed red, and she kept cursing. Gu Mingfeng. You're crazy. Who are you to dare lay a hand on me? Do you believe that I'll go back and tell the patriarch to punish you? Gu Mingfeng was expressionless as he pretended not to hear anything and tied her hands behind her back as well. Ungrateful B*****. Youth, slap. A resounding slap interrupted Gu Mingzhu's insults. Her face was tilted to the side, and her left cheek quickly swelled up. Gu Mingfeng stared at her with a cold gaze. I never said that I don't hit women. Also, if you want to go back and complain, you'll have to see if you have the life to do so. Gu Mingzhu looked at him and realized that the young man from a lowly background who was always taciturn and allowed her to bully him had unknowingly grown up and become extremely dangerous. Chu Luiyue walked to Mu Hongyu's side, pressed down on her shoulders, and carefully helped her set her bones. She didn't even raise her head as she lightly said, he didn't even raise his head and said, it won't be too late to let her die after she collects all the debt she owes us. Chapter 137. Chu Luiyue's words made Gu Mingzhu feel uneasy. She put on a fierce front. Chu Luiyue, what are you trying to do? Let me tell you, I'm the 2nd daughter of the Gu family. If you really do anything to me, the Gu family won't let you off. Chu Luiyue couldn't be bothered with her. Make her shut up. Gu Mingfeng looked around and tore off a section of Gu Mingzhu's sleeve. He rolled it into a ball and stuffed it into her mouth. Half of Gu Mingzhu's arm was exposed. She instantly felt humiliated and angry. She whimpered a few times but couldn't say anything. Gu Mingfeng suddenly glanced at her. Gu Mingzhu immediately remembered the slap he gave her and instinctively stopped. She didn't dare to make a fuss anymore. This Gu Mingfeng looked especially gloomy and fierce today. She even felt that if she angered him, he would really kill her. Gu Mingzhu still cherished her life. After the fear grew in her heart, she obediently shut her mouth. Chu Luiyue ground the golden mane bear's pill of essence into powder and mixed it with 2 herbs that he carried with him. He then gave it to Mu Hongyu. When Sinhu saw this, he couldn't help but ask, Luyu, why is Hongyu and I treated differently? I swallowed the pill of essence directly, but you were so meticulous with Hongyu. You can't treat me like this just because I'm an uncouth man. Mu Hongyu felt that she had recovered a lot and was in a good mood. She couldn't help but raise her chin proudly. Sinhu, do you still know that you're a man? Why are you so jealous? Of course, Luyu treats me the best. All of you have to be behind him. You're not as likable as me. Her words made everyone laugh. Chu Luiyue said, the livid horse is a 3rd-grade fiend. It's fine to consume the pill of essence directly. However, the golden mane bear is different. Hongyu happened to be injured and her body is weak. If she uses the entire pill of essence, the disadvantages will outweigh the advantages. She placed the remaining powder of the pill of essence in Mu Hongyu's hand and instructed her seriously. Divide the remaining powder into 2 doses. Use it once every 8 hours. Your injuries will be healed greatly. Really? That's great. Mu Hongyu happily put away the things. Thinking of what had happened today, she felt very emotional. I really didn't expect that I could use the powder ground from the golden mane bear's core of origin to heal my injuries. Furthermore, I was the one who helped you hunt it. Lu Yu had said that the 4 of them had contributed greatly as well. This victory belonged to the 4 of them. Even though he was injured, he would still be proud of such a battle result. In the past, news of Rong Jin hunting a 4th-grade fiend had spread for a long time. Compared to the one he hunted, their fiend was only stronger. Even in the entire academy, they could definitely be considered as the most outstanding batch. Sigh, it's a pity that the golden mane bear died. Otherwise, it would have been great to hunt it. Tsinhu smacked his lips. That's a rank 4 magical beast. Chu Liuyue's lips curved up. That golden mane bear is a female bear that has been offended. There's no way it can be tamed. Keeping it by our side will only cause trouble. Tsinhu chuckled. I'm just saying. In that situation, either it died or we died. Of course, we had to end it. Mu Hongyu leaned against the tree trunk with her uninjured shoulder and could not help but agree. Yeah. 4th-grade fiends aren't easy to find. Now that we're all injured, it'll be difficult for us to deal with fiends of this level in the future. It was not easy for them to meet one, but they did not expect it to be in danger because of Gu Mingzhu. Chu Luyue and Gu Mingfeng were better off, but her and Tsinhu's injuries were indeed quite serious. They probably would not be able to gain much from Wanling Mountain this time. Sigh, I originally wanted to hunt a rank 4 magical beast, but it seems like there's no hope now. Chu Luyue suddenly knocked on her forehead lightly. Who said that there's no hope? Mu Hongyu widened her almond-shaped eyes. Don't tell me, you want to help me hunt. Chu Luyue smiled meaningfully. Why go through so much trouble? Isn't there a ready-made one? It's just inside. Gu Mingzhu stood at the entrance of a cave and said unwillingly. You walk in front. Chu Luyue said. Gu Mingzhu suppressed the anger in her heart and turned to walk inside. Chu Luyue and the others followed closely behind. Gu Mingzhu was tightly tied up, so they were not worried that she would do anything or suddenly escape. The cave did not look big, but it was very spacious inside. They walked for a while before reaching the innermost part. Chu Luyue saw a den at first glance. That's where the golden mane bear cub is. Gu Mingzhu said unwillingly. She was almost annoyed to death. She thought that she could pick up a treasure, but who knew that she would be killed? In the end, she even provoked Chu Luyue, who was difficult to deal with. She was tied up yesterday and could not sit or lie down. She stood like that for the entire night and looked much more haggard. However, Chu Luyue did not let her go just like that. Instead, he asked her to tell him where she found the golden mane bear cub. She had no choice but to bring them here. As if it heard the movement, there was a sound in the den, as if something was moving. Then, a round head poked out. It's really a golden mane bear cub. Mu Hongyu exclaimed softly. The golden mane bear cub was only the length of an adult's forearm. Its fur was still light gray, and there was a circle of slightly darker fur around its neck. It was obvious that it was born not long ago. When it grew up, its fur would naturally turn golden brown. It blinked and looked curiously at Chu Luyue and the others. It scratched its round ears, as if it did not understand what was going on. In the end, its gaze landed on Mu Hongyu, and it opened its arms wide. Mu Hongyu's eyes widened. WW, what does it mean? WW, want me to hug it? Chu Luiyue thought for a moment. It's probably because you took the pill of essence. It felt a familiar aura from you, so it's especially close to you. Really? Mu Hongyu was skeptical. While they were talking, the golden mane bear cub saw that it did not get a response for a long time. It crawled out on its own and staggered to Mu Hongyu. It pounced on her leg and hugged it tightly. Mu Hongyu's heart melted instantly. She quickly hugged the cub. The golden mane bear cub was satisfied. It leaned on her shoulder and rubbed against it affectionately. Chu Luiyue joked with a smile. It's still too young. It can't survive here alone. Why don't you take care of it in the future? Mu Hongyu was surprised and happy. Really? No one here is more suitable than you. Mu Hongyu naturally would not refuse. This was the cub of a 4th-grade magical beast. It was the easiest to tame and was the best choice for hunting. Moreover, this golden mane bear cub was very close to her. She really liked it. Then I won't hold back. Mu Hongyu carefully hugged the golden mane bear cub and pinched its ears. Chu Luiyue suddenly felt a little itchy on her cheek. She looked down and saw that the cub had poked its head over, as if it was waiting for something. Seeing that Chu Luiyue did not move, its 2 pointed ears twitched. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows. This is asking for a pet. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 138. Chu Luiyue stretched out her hand and tapped its head. Don't always compare yourself to others. The little thing shuddered and looked up with a pained expression, as if it didn't expect Chu Luiyue to say something so heartless. It only wanted to be touched. Wasn't this request too outrageous? It grabbed Chu Luiyue's finger and pressed it to its ear. Touch me. Chu Luiyue, it was so small, but it had such a big temper, she had no choice but to pinch the soft, fluffy ears. It felt good. Only then was the little thing satisfied. It angrily turned around, swept its tail, and buried its face in it. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but laugh. Can you let me go now? Gu Mingzhu suddenly said in a cold tone. She was obviously full of resentment for what she had experienced in the past day and night. Chu Luiyue blinked. What are you dreaming about? You caused us to walk between life and death. Do you think we'll let it go just like that? But you already got the golden mane bear cub. We deserve it. We defeated the golden mane bear. As long as we use its pill of essence as a clue, we'll find this place sooner or later. We only let you lead the way to save some time. You don't think this is a great contribution, do you? Chu Luiyue spoke softly and slowly. These 2 simple sentences made Gu Mingzhu speechless. At this moment, she finally realized that Chu Luiyue really didn't plan on letting her go so easily. Then what do you want? Chu Luiyue, don't go overboard. I still have a signal tube on me. If you dare to do anything to me, I'll definitely seek justice from the teachers and elders. Chu Luiyue looked at the agitated Gu Mingzhu and smiled indifferently and mockingly. That's good. We can also take the opportunity to ask. You caused 2 of our fellow disciples to die tragically, 2 of them to go missing, and you even dragged us into danger. How should we punish you for doing these things? Gu Mingzhu bit her lip hard. Rumble. A muffled voice that sounded like a sudden clap of thunder was heard. Chu Luiyue frowned and quickly walked out of the cave. When she stood halfway up the mountain and looked down, she was completely stunned. What's wrong? What happened? This commotion is... Sin, who was the first to catch up. When he reached Chu Luiyue's side, he noticed that something was wrong with her expression and couldn't help but follow her gaze. The moment he saw it, his eyes widened. At the foot of the mountain, in the forest, a group of magical beasts were rushing towards their mountain. Second-grade silver-feathered wind-chasing deer. Sin, who took a closer look and saw the silver feathers on their heads. He instantly recognized them. This kind of magical beast was actually very common. It had a gentle temperament and was extremely fast. Aristocratic families usually hunted them as mounts. However, they had always been alone. Why were there so many of them gathered all of a sudden? At a rough glance, there were at least 30 to 40 of them. However, this was not all. Behind them was a group of black bats. They flew over with a whoosh. Sinhu's face twitched. Third-grade purple thunder bats. Aren't these poisonous creatures only active at night? Why are they out in broad daylight now? Moreover, there are more of them than the silver-feathered wind-chasing deer. Chu Luiwa slowly clenched her fists in her sleeves. She quickly scanned the surroundings, her gaze heavy. At this moment, Mu Hongyu and the rest had also caught up. When they saw the situation at the foot of the mountain, they were also shocked. Wait! There's one in the northwest too. That's a fire cloud leopard. There's one in the south too. It's a golden-eyed beast. The few of them looked at each other. Mu Hongyu couldn't help but ask. Could it be, this is the magical beast tide? Otherwise, there was no way to explain the sudden appearance of so many magical beasts. Moreover, they were moving in unison. But shouldn't they be moving towards the center of Wanling Mountain? We're still in the periphery. Why are they moving towards us? Sinhu was puzzled. Chu Luiwa slowly clenched her fists in her sleeves. We're surrounded. At the same time, the others in Wanling Mountain also sensed that something was amiss. Somewhere, Si Ting and the rest were surrounded by third-grade red flaming tigers. The battle was in a stalemate, and both sides were injured. Si Yang wiped the blood off his face and gritted his teeth. Big brother, these red flaming tigers seem to be at odds with us. What should we do? They were unlucky to have met a lone red flaming tiger, so they helped a teammate hunt it. Who knew that the red flaming tigers would follow their auras and fight with them? After such a tough battle, they were almost exhausted. However, these red flaming tigers seemed to want to fight to the death with them. They had never heard of the magical beasts in Wanling Mountain being so difficult to deal with. Si Ting frowned. Zhou Yun and the other two are severely injured. We have to send them back immediately. Si Yang smiled bitterly. I've already pulled the signal tube, but teacher hasn't arrived yet. Big brother, the situation this time doesn't seem right. Si Ting pursed his thin lips. In fact, they all had this premonition. These magical beasts seemed to have been provoked by something, and their attacks were extremely strong. They had also met other teams earlier, and the situation was tragic. Many of them had already left with serious injuries. Teacher hadn't arrived yet, and he was probably delayed on the way. Roar! A red flaming tiger suddenly roared. Si Yang and the rest stared at them even more nervously, afraid that they would charge forward together. However, what surprised them was that the red flaming tiger suddenly turned around and ran into the forest. The other red flaming tigers followed closely behind. In the blink of an eye, they all disappeared. What's going on? Si Yang was stunned. Could it be that the magical beast tide has appeared? According to teacher, the magical beasts in Wanling Mountain would all rush toward one place at a time. Si Ting's heart was in his mouth. No. They're not going to the center of the mountain. More and more magical beasts gathered at the foot of the mountain. The few people standing on the mountain fell into a strange silence. They had already sensed that extreme danger was approaching. How can this be? Why are they coming for us? The golden mane bear cub in Mu Hongyu's arms suddenly became restless and struggled uneasily. She hugged and coaxed it for a while before finally calming it down. Chu Luiyue didn't say anything. These magical beasts weren't coming for them. They were coming for her. Digression: I planted a little devil and reaped a bunch of big devils. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 139. Chu Luiyue could not understand why. She had never been to Wanling Mountain and had never hunted any fiends to provoke them. However, no matter if it was the livid horse at the beginning or the red wolf pack later on, she could clearly feel that these magical beasts were indeed coming for her. Luyu, what should we do now? Even someone as bold as Mu Hongyu felt uneasy when she saw this. Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment. Teacher Dongfang once said that the fiends in Wanling Mountain rarely leave the forest. If we go out, we might be able to shake them off. Mu Hongyu nodded in realization. Yes, yes. Let's leave this place quickly. They could deal with 1 or 2 fiends or even a group of them. However, the number of fiends heading here was uncountable. If they were to face them head-on, they would definitely die. Even if the elders and teachers came, they might not be their match. Gu Mingfeng suddenly spoke up, his expression tense. It might be a little difficult to leave now. They looked down the mountain again and saw that the golden-eyed demon beasts had stopped at the foot of the mountain. They were lined up neatly like an army and looked up. Countless pairs of cold and cruel eyes were like sharp blades that scraped across their bodies. That was pure murderous intent. They have blocked the way over there. Tsinhu said softly. Gu Mingfeng shook his head. No, all of our paths have been sealed. Almost at the same time that the golden-eyed demon beast rushed over, other magical beasts also arrived from other directions, blocking their way down the mountain. At a glance, it was a vast expanse of darkness. The air was filled with a strong murderous intent. Everyone fell into silence. Anyone could tell that they were in a desperate situation. With such a great disparity in strength, the outcome was obvious. Mu Hongyu's face was pale. Are we really going to die here today? She looked at Chu Luiyue almost instinctively and saw that she was also frowning. Mu Hongyu suddenly mocked herself in her heart. She was really confused. In this situation, even if Chu Luiyue had 3 heads and 6 arms, he would still be helpless. None of them spoke. The atmosphere seemed to have been frozen, cold and heavy. Go back. Chu Luiyue suddenly said. Everyone was taken aback. Back to where? We're surrounded now, there's no way we can break through and leave. Back to the cave. Chu Luiyue said as he turned around and walked towards the cave. The first to react was actually Gu Mingzhu. She took a step back and screamed, I'm not going back. Chu Luiyue frowned and turned to look at her. Gu Mingzhu was probably shocked by the scene at the foot of the mountain. She was already a little hysterical. Chu Luiyue, don't drag me down if you want to die. The entire mountain had been surrounded. Going back to the cave was a dead end. I won't go back with you. Chu Luiyue looked at her as if she was crazy. At this moment, she was not in the mood to care about her. Moreover, she did not intend to bring Gu Mingzhu along as a burden. Up to you. With that said, he looked at Mu Hongyu and the others and raised his chin. Hurry up. Time waits for no one. Hearing Chu Luiyue's words, Mu Hongyu and the others immediately followed. Even though he didn't know what Chu Luiyue was up to, her expression and tone always had the power to make people feel at ease. Moreover, after going through so many things, they had long regarded Chu Luiyue as their backbone. At this moment, whatever she said to do, they would naturally do as she said. Their figures quickly disappeared from the cave. Only Gu Mingzhu was left halfway up the mountain. She only came back to her senses when they were completely out of sight. She was in disbelief. Chu Luyue and the others actually let her go so easily. Roar! The roar of the fiends in the forest woke Gu Mingzhu up abruptly. She glanced down and sensed a strong murderous intent. Her legs turned to jelly and she almost knelt on the ground. No, no. She couldn't die here. She had to leave this place alive. Fortunately, she still had a trump card. They walked into the cave again. Xinhu followed behind Chu Luyue and could not help but look back. He was somewhat indignant. Lu Yu, we haven't settled the score with her yet. Are you going to let her go just like that? That's letting her off too easily. Chu Luyue said indifferently. Since she wants to die, why should we stop her? Xinhu's eyes lit up. You mean, there are so many people outside. It's almost impossible for her to escape. She'll just be courting death. She could clearly see through Gu Mingzhu's thoughts. Instead of wasting energy to deal with her, it was better to let her jump into a fire pit. Forget it, let's not care about her. Lu Yu, let's think about what we should do first, shall we? It's not a good idea to keep hiding in this cave. Mu Hongyu hugged the golden mane bear cub, still looking worried. Who says we're going to sit here and wait for death? Chu Luyue asked softly. The three of them looked at each other. Golden mane bears are very powerful, but they hibernate every winter. Usually, to avoid being disturbed by other magical beasts, they won't hibernate in their usual dens. Instead, they'll choose a more secretive place. That place is usually connected to their dens, so it's convenient for them to move around. Chu Luyue explained patiently as they walked in. However, these words immediately made Mu Hongyu and the other two react. You're saying that we can go from here to where the golden mane bear hibernates and escape without a trace? As they spoke, they had already reached the den where the golden mane bear cub was. Xinhu rushed over excitedly, but after looking around, he did not find anything out of the ordinary. He could not help but feel disappointed. There's nothing here. Lu Yu, don't tell me there's no way to get to where the golden mane bear hibernates. After all, this entire mountain belongs to it. Wouldn't it be the same if it went outside? If it's so easy to find, this golden mane bear wouldn't have survived until now. As Chu Luyue spoke, he motioned for Mu Hongyu to put the golden mane bear cub down. The golden mane bear cub suddenly left the warm embrace and was confused for a moment. It could not help but blink and wanted to crawl towards Mu Hongyu again. Chu Luyue made Mu Hongyu move away while he went forward and tapped its head lightly. Its round body immediately flipped over. The golden mane bear cub did not admit defeat and continued to move forward. Chu Luyue stopped it again. After a few times, it finally stopped and glared at Chu Luyue pitifully before turning to leave. It wobbled to a certain place and finally laid down against the mountain wall. Chu Luyue's eyes lit up. He quickly walked forward and squatted down to take a closer look. Indeed, the color of the mountain wall was different from the other places. It's here. She pressed one hand on the wall and pushed with force. Creak, a hole suddenly appeared on the mountain wall. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 140. Did you find it? Seeing the sudden appearance of the cave, they were overjoyed. Chu Luyue looked inside. It was dark inside, and she could barely see anything. Use this. A hand suddenly reached out, and in that hand was a grape-sized luminous pearl that emitted a bright light. Chu Luyue took the pearl and nodded at Gu Mingfeng. Thank you. It's my pleasure. With the help of the luminous pearl, Chu Luyue could finally see the situation inside the cave. The path in the cave leads downwards. There are stairs. Everyone, be careful. With that, she took the lead and walked down. Mu Hongyu hugged the golden mane bear cub again and quickly followed. When she passed by Gu Mingfeng, she smiled. Gu Mingfeng, you have quite a lot of things on you. This luminous pearl is worth a lot. Gu Mingfeng's status in the Gu family was very low. Usually, when he was in school, he was more frugal with his food and clothing. Thus, Mu Hongyu and Xin Hu were very shocked when he suddenly took out the luminous pearl. Gu Mingfeng lowered his eyes and didn't say anything. He followed. Mu Hongyu was stunned and looked at Xin Hu. Did she say something wrong? But she didn't say anything. Chu Liuyue's heart skipped a beat. Gu Mingfeng obviously didn't want to talk about this. But she didn't ask in detail and just continued walking. This was a long and narrow tunnel. As they walked, although they could only see the situation around them, they could still feel that this path was very winding. Chu Liyue silently calculated in her heart. She guessed that they should have walked down some distance, but she didn't know if they had reached the foot of the mountain. And the direction was not clear. But she couldn't care about that now. It would be best if they could use this path to avoid the attacks of the magical beasts. Oh my god, this golden mane bear is too powerful. Just this path in the mountain must have taken a lot of effort, right? Xin Hu sighed as they walked. To ordinary people, this is naturally a huge project. But the golden mane bear's body is very strong. This is not difficult for it. Xin Hu was speechless. The golden mane bear is so strong, but it was still defeated by you. If you ask me, Lu Yu, you're the scariest one. Chu Liyue couldn't help but laugh. She had said a few times that they were able to defeat the golden mane bear because of their combined strength, but Xin Hu seemed to think that she was hiding something and admired her a lot. With such a straightforward personality, it was hard for him to change his mind once he decided on something. Thus, Chu Liyue decided not to explain further and just let him be. They didn't see the end of it. Xin Hu was a little. When is this going to end? Before she could finish speaking, the golden mane bear cub in Mu Hongyu's arms suddenly moved. When Chu Liyue saw this, she finally heaved a sigh of relief. Almost there. They continued walking. Sure enough, it didn't take long for their vision to open up. A huge cave appeared in front of them. Xin Hu quickened his pace and was the first to walk over. He quickly looked around and the excitement on his face froze. That's not right. Lu Yu, why isn't there an exit here? Chu Liyue rubbed her forehead helplessly. This is where the golden mane bear hibernates. It's meant to prevent it from being disturbed. Why would there be an exit here? Then how do we get out? Chu Liyue walked over step by step and scanned the surroundings. Naturally, we'll make an exit ourselves. Her tone was calm and natural, as if she was saying that the weather was good today. It was as if she didn't find her words shocking at all. Even Gu Mingfeng couldn't help but frown. Make an exit. From here. Chu Liyue nodded. If we work together, it shouldn't take too long. Lu Yu, are you serious? Mu Hongyu stared at her in a daze. We don't even know where we are. What if this place is at the bottom of the mountain? Won't we have to dig for months? It won't take that long. I've already looked around. The walls here are made of the same stone as the cave. We're still in the mountain. That's the center of the mountain, so we're definitely closer to the outside now. As long as we make an exit, everything won't be a problem. Chu Liyue looked at the others who were still in a daze. Otherwise, do you have a better idea? They fell silent. Gu Mingfeng took a deep breath. Tell us, where should we start? When Chu Liyue and the others walked through the secret passage in the mountain, the situation outside became more and more tense. Unknowingly, the outside of the mountain was surrounded by many magical beasts. Fierce murderous intent filled the air, and it was frightening. However, they didn't go up the mountain to attack. Instead, they lined up neatly and looked like they were ready for battle. It looked like they were waiting for something. If someone saw this scene, they would definitely feel that something was wrong. But Gu Mingzhu didn't think so. She found a remote corner in the middle of the mountain and hid behind a big rock. After waiting for a while, she realized that the magical beasts didn't attack immediately. She couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. Fortunately, there was always a way out. Although she didn't know why these magical beasts suddenly stopped, she felt very lucky. Because what she needed the most now was time. She touched her waist with one hand, looking anxious and excited. As long as no one disturbed her, she could escape safely. Suddenly, the smile on her face froze, and she looked at her belt in disbelief. That's not right. That thing was clearly here. Why is it gone now? Somewhere in Wanling Mountain. Wen Yan was rushing when he suddenly heard footsteps. His heart suddenly jumped. Looking over, he finally saw that the person who had come was Bai Qin. Behind him was Si Ting and the others. They were in a hurry and seemed to be rushing to do something. Wen Yan went forward. Bai Qin, where are you going? Are Si Ting and the rest injured too? Bai Qin saw that it was Wen Yan and quickly took a few steps forward with a serious expression. Wen Yan, do you feel that something is wrong? Wen Yan was stunned. You mean, the magical beasts in Wanling Mountain are more aggressive than before? Bai Qin nodded and then shook his head. Not entirely. There were signs of this yesterday. A few elders and teachers already knew about it and sent many seriously injured students out. But now, there is something more serious. Oh. What is it? Wen Yan asked curiously. Bai Qin took a deep breath and briefly told him about what Si Ting and the others had encountered earlier. In fact, it's not just them. Many people encountered the same situation. If I'm not wrong, the magical beasts in Wanling Mountain seem to have received some kind of command at that moment. Or rather, an order. That's why they were so consistent. The most important thing is that in the past, all the magical beasts went into the mountain range. But this time, Wen Yan's heart jumped. I'm afraid the one who can control these magical beasts is, boom. An earth-shattering explosion suddenly sounded. The few of them looked up and saw a mountain peak in the distance suddenly collapse. A huge magical beast spread its wings and soared into the sky. Boundless pressure covered the sky and covered the earth. That's a high-level magical beast. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 141. It was a large, blood-red python. The scales on its body shone with a cold, iron-blooded glow under the sunlight. The black bone wings on its back almost covered the entire sky. His powerful and terrifying aura made it hard for people to breathe. Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned. Bai Qin widened his eyes, almost thinking that he had seen wrongly. That's a 7th-grade black flying python. Si Ting and the rest were shocked. A 7th-grade advanced fiend. That powerful existence that only existed in legends. Quick! Retreat! Wen Yan's lips turned pale. He immediately reacted and shouted. Inform everyone in the academy to retreat from Wanling Mountain. Roar! The moment the black flying python appeared, all the fiends in Wanling Mountain roared in unison. The sound was earth-shattering. That was their way of expressing their submission. The black flying python flapped its wings, and its body flashed. It quickly headed toward the mountain where Chu Luyue and the rest were. All the fiends welcomed it respectfully. The fiends had a strict hierarchy. As a 7th-grade black flying python, it naturally had the highest status here. In fact, this was indeed its territory. It was very fast. In just a few breaths, it was already in front of the mountain. Its cold and green eyes were filled with indifferent murderous intent. Then, it let out a strange sound from its throat. The fiends gathered at the foot of the mountain responded in unison. Then, they rushed toward the mountain. Why did it disappear? The family head had specially given it to her in the past because he was worried that she would encounter danger. She could not bear to use it when she was chased by the golden mane bear, but she knew that she had to use it now. But, why couldn't she find it? Gu Mingzhu searched her body again, but she still could not find it. She gradually panicked. If she did not have that thing, how could she leave this place safely? She could not help but look up at the fiend in midair. Although she could not recognize what it was, she was sure that it was an extremely dangerous high-level fiend. And now, it seemed to be planning to attack. What should she do? Gu Mingzhu was so anxious that her heart was beating wildly. Her face was pale, and her limbs were cold. Rumble. Just as she was feeling worried, a loud sound was heard. She looked over in shock, only to see that the magical beasts at the foot of the mountain were suddenly charging towards the mountain peak. With so many magical beasts charging at her at the same time, it almost caused the rocks under her feet to tremble. She became more and more afraid and ran in a certain direction in a panic. Chu Luiyue and the others were just about to start looking for the exit when they felt a powerful fluctuation. A few pieces of gravel fell from the mountain wall. Mu Hongyu was shocked. What's wrong? What happened outside? It seems like someone is attacking. No. It should be those magical beasts. Xin who suddenly came back to his senses. Who else could it be other than them? Why are they attacking the mountain? Are they trying to force us out? Mu Hongyu frowned. Why are they targeting us? Chu Luiyue lowered his eyes slightly. Gu Mingfeng narrowed his eyes when he saw her expression. Do you want to continue? They all looked at Chu Luiyue. Under such circumstances, there didn't seem to be much point in continuing to stay here and break out of another exit. Perhaps they didn't have the time at all. With those magical beasts chasing them so crazily, they would only die if they stayed here. Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment and finally said, continue. I'll go back. What? Mu Hongyu was shocked and pulled her back. Are you crazy? Won't you be courting death if you go back now? The entire mountain has been surrounded. Even if we don't go out, we won't be able to escape. If I go back, I can still buy some time. Take advantage of this opportunity to continue forward and break out of another exit. It should be safer to go out from there. As Chu Luiyue spoke, she suddenly took something out of her sleeve. It was a palm-sized black crystal disc with some engravings on it. It looked very mysterious and had a faint suppressive aura. Shock flashed across Gu Mingfeng's eyes when he saw this. He immediately looked at Chu Luiyue. This is Black Xian Formation Crystal. Mu Hongyu recognized what it was and exclaimed. Why do you have this? The so-called Black Xian Formation Crystal was a Xian formation engraved on a black crystal to seal the power of the Xian formation inside. This item was extremely precious because even a low-level Xian master could activate the Xian formation on it with just a little bit of power. From there, they could use a Xian formation of a higher level. And the attack power would naturally be stronger. However, this black Xian formation crystal was extremely difficult to engrave. It was rare even for aristocratic families. Chu Luiyue shook her head. This isn't mine. It's Gu Mingzhu's. Gu, Mu Hongyu was at a loss for words, but she immediately reacted. You secretly took it. When? Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows nonchalantly. That's not important. She owes us so much. Just take it as some interest for now. Xin who gave him a thumbs up in admiration. I was wondering why you let her off so easily. She was still complaining that you let her off too easily. So you simply took drastic measures to deal with her. No wonder Gu Mingzhu didn't want to come with us. There are so many fiends at the foot of the mountain, but she dared to stay outside and plan to escape alone. So it's because she has this treasure as her trump card. There is a level 5 Xian formation engraved on it. It's extremely powerful and can help you a lot. After Chu Liyue finished speaking, she handed the black Xian formation crystal to Gu Mingfeng. I've already activated more than half of the Xian formation on it. You just need to inject a bit more power into it, and it will be completely activated. I'll leave Hongyu and Xinhu to you. Gu Mingfeng was stunned. He didn't expect Chu Liyue to say such a thing. Leave the two of them to me. Does she trust me? Chu Liyue seemed to have seen through Gu Mingfeng's doubts. Her lips curled up slightly, and her gaze was fixed. I'll see you outside the mountain. Gu Mingfeng didn't know what to feel. He had never been so valued and trusted by anyone before. Even though he had outstanding talent, he was still looked down upon and humiliated because of his lowly background. Everyone in the Gu family said that he was cold-blooded and was just an ingrate. They had the same blood flowing in their veins, but they also gave him the deepest pain. But Chu Liyue. They had only known each other for a few days, but she was actually willing to trust him so much. He looked into her eyes. There was no contempt, sarcasm, or mockery in those clear and bright eyes. There was only calmness and calmness. She was serious. Gu Mingfeng felt something surging in his heart. In the end, he reached out and took the black Xian formation crystal. Okay. Chu Liyue's eyes curved into crescents as she smiled. Since Gu Mingfeng said so, it meant that he was willing to give it his all. Mu Hongyu and Xinhu were injured. After she left, they could only rely on him. She returned the luminous pearl to Gu Mingfeng and didn't say anything else. She turned and left. Her figure quickly disappeared into the darkness. Mu Hongyu took a step forward, wanting to stop her. Gu Mingfeng walked in front of her. Since she said that she'll see you outside the mountain, she definitely won't go back on her words. Instead of worrying, why don't we act quickly and meet up with her? We don't have much time. The longer we delay, the more danger she will be in. Mu Hongyu bit her red lips. She was struggling in her heart. Finally, she nodded vigorously. Let's go. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 142. Chu Liyue walked alone in the tunnel. The closer she got to the outside, the clearer she could feel the power of the attack. She could imagine what was going on outside. Rocks continued to fall from the mountain walls, smashing into her side. However, Chu Liyue did not stop. She walked out firmly. This trip was dangerous, but she had to go. Moreover, she also wanted to know why the demonic beasts in Wanling mountain range were so against her. She felt an itch on her neck. She looked down at the blood ferret on her shoulder. It's dangerous outside. You'd better not follow me. The little thing shook its head. No. It wanted to follow her. Chu Liyue chuckled and tapped its head. Aren't you very timid? You ran faster than anyone else when we were in danger. Why do you want to follow me now? I'm not kidding. You should know what's going on outside. There's really no need to follow me. The little thing seemed to be hurt by her words. It puffed up its cheeks angrily and glared at her. Then, it turned around and faced her with its butt. I said I'm not going, so I'm not going. It wasn't that kind of cowardly creature. Could it be that in her eyes, it was like this? I want to follow her. Chu Liyue did not know whether to laugh or cry. She felt warm inside. It's not impossible if you want to follow me out. However, if you encounter danger, just run for your life. Do you hear me? The little thing swung its tail and covered its ears. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and continued walking out. At the same time, on the other side of Wanling Mountain, Elder Sun and the rest were caught off guard by the sudden appearance of the black flying python in the sky. What's going on? Why would the black flying python appear there at this time? Elder Sun was shocked. The other teachers who came with him looked at each other. Elder Sun, you know there's a black flying python here. Elder Sun nodded with a serious expression. The entire Wanling Mountain is its territory. In fact, the so-called magical beast tide was also caused by it. The black-winged python's cultivation required it to devour a large amount of energy, and this included low-level magical beasts. Due to the pressure of a magic beast's level, those low-level magic beasts had no choice but to gather together and let it do as it pleased. 3 years ago, Marshal Uncle and I saw it here by chance. At that time, it was only at the peak of level 6. I didn't expect it to break through to level 7 in just 3 years. Everyone was shocked. Elder Sun frowned. The mountain in the middle of Wanling Mountain Range is the nest of the black flying python. It never left before. But now, for some unknown reason, he appeared at the border. Qingyi, how many students are there in this mountain range? A teacher next to him calculated in his heart and immediately said, 2 days ago, many demonic beasts appeared in the forest, and they were extremely aggressive. Many students were injured and had to retreat. Less than a third of them are still inside. Elder Sun stared at the terrifyingly huge body and muttered, no wonder it's so strange this time. It's all because of this guy. Even though there was a distance between them, he could still clearly feel the surging killing intent from the black heaven-devouring python. What did it want to do? He suppressed the uneasiness in his heart and ordered, split up and bring the rest of the students back. Remember, be careful. Don't provoke that black flying python. Yes. Chu Luiyue quickly returned to the cave. From here, she could clearly hear the powerful aura approaching from outside. She took a deep breath and walked out. When her figure appeared at the entrance of the cave, a cold glint flashed across the eyes of the black flying python in midair. Then, it stretched out its neck and hissed. All the demonic beasts that were rushing forward heard the order and stopped. However, they had almost occupied half of the mountain. The golden-eyed demonic beast at the front had already jumped to the top of the mountain and was confronting Chu Luiyue. No, it should be said that Chu Luiyue was completely surrounded. Chu Luiyue followed the voice and looked at the sky. When she saw the huge body clearly, she was shocked. A level 7 black flying python. No wonder these demonic beasts were so obedient. It turned out that there was such an existence. A human and a beast looked at each other. Chu Luiyue could clearly see that the pair of vertical pupils were filled with biting cold murderous intent. It was indeed coming for her. It wanted to take her life. Chu Luiyue's heart sank. The sun was shining brightly at this moment, but her body was cold. A level 7 demonic beast. If it was her previous life, she would naturally not care. But now, how could she be a match for it? Not to mention that there were so many demonic beasts waiting for her. Chu Luiyue did not doubt that as long as the black flying python gave the order, these demonic beasts would immediately rush forward and tear her into pieces. In this atmosphere where the air seemed to be frozen, the black flying python moved and headed towards Chu Luiyue. When it approached, the golden-eyed demonic beasts all bowed down. The demonic beasts on the mountain also became more and more respectful. The black flying python looked down at Chu Luiyue from above. Just a glance. A formless pressure descended upon them. That was the terrifying power that only high-level demonic beasts had. Chu Luiyue only felt as if something had ruthlessly crushed her body and her entire body was in intense pain. Her face instantly turned pale and sweat broke out on her forehead. The little thing that was originally nestled on her shoulder was also affected and gave out a painful moan. It was a demonic beast and was suppressed by the black flying python's bloodline pressure, so naturally it would not be any better. Chu Luiyue took a look at it and saw that it was trembling all over. Obviously it was extremely afraid and in extreme pain. However, its two claws were tightly grabbing onto her clothes and refused to let go. She forced herself to hold on as she turned back to look at the black flying python and asked word by word, "It's not impossible for you to take my life. But at the very least, you have to first tell me the reason and let me die with a clear understanding, right?" The black flying python looked at her indifferently and did not open its mouth but increased its strength. Crack! The ground under Chu Luiyue's feet instantly cracked open. Intense pain engulfed her entire body, almost causing Chu Luiyue's vision to turn black. She clenched her teeth and stood still as a light suddenly flashed through her mind. How easy would it be to kill her? But this black flying python did not directly attack. Compared to wanting her life, it seemed, it wanted her to submit more. Digression, mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 143. She did not know this black flying python, and today was her first time seeing it. Why was it acting like this? Chu Luiyue could not figure it out. However, this black flying python did not seem to want to explain. It only stared at her and kept increasing the pressure on Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue groaned, and blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth. However, she still stood straight. She reached out and slowly wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth. She looked at the black flying python again with a heavy gaze. After a moment of silence, she suddenly smiled. "If I kneel just because you want me to, wouldn't I be too embarrassed?" Hearing her words, a trace of anger flashed across the black flying python's eyes. Boom! It swept its tail, and a strong wind attacked. Chu Luiyue's body flew backward and landed heavily on the mountain rock. Bang! A dull sound was heard, and blood immediately flowed out from her back. Chu Luiyue coughed and spat out the blood clots. Her originally pale lips were dyed red with blood, and she looked especially miserable. Her shoulder blade was probably broken. She used her arms to support herself and stood up with difficulty. However, before she could stand firm, another terrifying force attacked her again. Bang! Chu Luiyue was thrown out again. This time, it was even heavier than before. Lil Thing clutched her clothes tightly and was brought down together with her. It looked at Chu Luiyue nervously, and its eyes were filled with tears. Chu Luiyue took a while to recover. She endured the intense pain, held onto the rock beside her, and stood up again. However, at this time, her breathing was weak, and her body was covered in blood. She looked very miserable. It was not that she did not want to fight back, but the other party did not give her a chance. A 7th grade fiend's abilities were unfathomable. At her current level, she did not have the right to fight with it. But, why? The little thing used its claws to quickly wipe away its tears and turned to look at the culprit angrily. Its teeth creaked. In the end, it actually jumped up and went straight for the other party. It wanted to kill this fellow. Come back. Chu Luiyue was shocked and wanted to stop him, but it was too late. The black heaven-devouring python's gaze shifted slightly. It looked at the blood ferret that was charging towards it as if it was looking at a dead object. He didn't know what death was. As the powerful pressure descended, the little thing's body suddenly stiffened, and then it fell heavily to the ground. It was lying on the ground, motionless. It was unknown whether it was dead or alive. Chu Luiyue's pupils suddenly shrank. His cold gaze fell on her. She looked up. The black heaven-swallowing python looked down at her, as if it was looking at an ant struggling in vain. After Elder Sun gave the order, the teachers who came with him immediately took action. Soon, they found the remaining students in the forest and sent them out of the forest. Things were progressing very smoothly. Before they set off, Old Sun had repeatedly warned them not to enter the heart of the mountain range. Therefore, most of the students stayed in the outer area, which made it easier for them to evacuate. When the teachers came back and said that most of the students had been sent out, Old Sun was a little surprised. So fast. Yes. The students didn't go deep. Although they were scattered, it was easy to find them. Moreover, I don't know if it was because of the black heaven-swallowing python, but all the magical beasts in the forest seemed to have been summoned, so we didn't encounter any obstacles. The teachers were also very glad. Old Sun nodded, and his heart finally calmed down. How many students are still in the forest? Other than the 3 who died, all the students in our batch have left, an elder said in a low voice. 4 died, and 1 is missing. The rest have also left, another elder said with a sorrowful expression. Sun Zhongyan was silent for a moment. This time, it was likely to be the most tragic battle the Academy had ever seen. If only he had known this would happen. Bai Qin, what about the new students? He suppressed his emotions and continued to ask. Bai Chen's expression was a little ugly. 2 people from Gu Mingzhu's team died. We found their corpses in the forest, but the remaining 3 are nowhere to be found. Also, there's no news about the 4 people in Chu Liuyue's team either. Sun Zhongyan was shocked. How can there be no news? The periphery is only so big. Moreover, they have a signal tube with them, so they should be able to find. He suddenly thought of something and his voice stopped abruptly. Bai Qin smiled bitterly. We've searched the other places, but there's nothing. There's only one place we haven't gone. Everyone knew where he was talking about. All their actions just now were to avoid the mountain occupied by the black heaven-swallowing python. They are very likely to be there. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone fell silent. The black heaven-swallowing python was very dangerous. If they were really there, they would be doomed. Sun Zhongyan frowned. After a moment, he said decisively, "You all leave first, I'll go there myself." Old Sun, please reconsider. That black heaven-swallowing python is extremely ferocious, and looking at the current situation, who knows what it is going to do. If you go now, won't you? I can't care so much. If there are no other places, then they can only be there. It's because the black heaven-swallowing python is too powerful that I have to go. Those students would not be able to last long under the encirclement of so many fiends. Old Sun, what if they are not there? Let's take a look first. There's no time. Sun Zhongyan shook his head. Bai Qin immediately said, I'll go with you. Si Ting stepped forward. His handsome face was calm, but there was a flash of emotion in his eyes. Master, I'm willing to go with you. Digression, Rong Xiao, as the male lead, am I not worthy of a name? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 144. No, that place is extremely dangerous. How can you go there? Old Master Sun rejected him without hesitation. Si Ting was talented and powerful, but that did not mean that he was powerful enough. If anything happened to him, what would happen to him as a teacher? Si Yang could not help but take a step forward and whisper. Big brother. Are you crazy? That's a 7th grade black flying python. Do you want to die? He looked around hesitantly and spoke even more softly. It's not worth it for you to take such a risk for someone else. Even if you go, you might just be a burden to old Master Sun. Si Ting was very insistent. Teacher, it's precisely because it's dangerous that I should go with you. You're my teacher. There's no reason for you to sit back and do nothing. What's more, you know how strong I am. Maybe I can help you when the time comes. Si Ting was a man of few words. Although his grades were top-notch, he was always very humble. Today, this was the first time he had said something like this. The other elders and teachers could not help but look at him. Si Yang glanced at him and knew that he could not stop him. He suddenly felt a headache coming on. Big Brother had always been decisive. Once he decided on something, he would never change his mind. If he said that he wanted to go, then, he would definitely go. Others might not know why, but he knew. Wasn't it because that person was there? Sigh. Si Yang sighed heavily and walked to the side. Out of sight, out of mind. Old Master Sun looked at Si Ting in surprise. You really want to go? Si Ting nodded. Old Master Sun was silent for a moment. Seeing his serious expression, he finally agreed. Since that's the case, follow me. The exit should be outside. Xinhu knocked on the wall in front of him and wiped the sweat off his forehead. He looked delighted. Mu Hongyu took 2 steps forward and knocked on the wall like Xinhu. Then, she leaned in closer to listen. The sound seems a little different from before. Mu Hongyu said uncertainly. Xinhu, are you sure that the exit is outside? Of course. When I was at home, I loved to follow my father up the mountain. Although I don't know much about these things, I can tell something. Xinhu patted his chest. If you open this layer of the mountain wall, you'll find that it's not the exit. You can do whatever you want with it. Seeing how confident he was, Mu Hongyu believed him. Then, she looked at Gu Mingfeng. Why don't you do it? Gu Mingfeng nodded, indicating for the two to step back. He stood in front of the mountain wall with the profound formation black crystal in his hand. With a thought, he poured the force in his body into it. A faint glow suddenly lit up. That was the sign that the Xian formation was about to be activated. The surroundings were dark and silent. This radiance had become the most dazzling existence. The 3 of them stared at the profound formation black crystal. The golden mane bear cub moved uneasily. Mu Hongyu quickly touched its ears and hugged it even tighter. If anything went wrong later, she would be able to protect it. Gu Mingfeng's power continued to pour into the Xian formation black crystal, and the light on it became more and more brilliant. Very quickly, the outline of a Xian formation appeared. A faint wave of pressure also gradually spread out. Xinhu suddenly whispered. I wonder how Lu Yu is doing. Mu Hongyu's heart skipped a beat. Although they could vaguely sense what was going on outside, they couldn't guess what was going on. Right now, no one knew what was going on outside. She suppressed the worry in her heart and took a deep breath. Lu Yu is very strong and smart. She'll be fine. Since she said she'll see you outside, she won't go back on her words. Let's just go out and meet up with her as soon as possible. Xinhu nodded his head vigorously. Yes. Buzz. A faint buzzing sound was suddenly heard. The 2 of them looked over and saw that the black crystal in Gu Mingfeng's hand had already formed a complete Xian formation. The light was resplendent, and the pressure was overwhelming. It's done. Xinhu excitedly waved his fist. However, very quickly, the light of the profound formation suddenly weakened. Even the power that they had sensed earlier seemed to have become unstable. What's going on? Xinhu's smile suddenly froze. Mu Hongyu suddenly realized something. Could it be that Gu Mingfeng's power isn't enough to activate the black crystal? Because they weren't Xian masters, they were at a disadvantage in this aspect. Warriors usually expended more energy than Xian masters to successfully activate the black crystal. But the two of us can't help him now. I've already used up all of my force, Xinhu said with a bitter smile. As he spoke, the light dimmed even more. Mu Hongyu weakly closed her eyes. If only I had already broken through to become a stage 4 warrior. If that was the case, there wouldn't be a problem. Lu Yu left his trump card to them and went out alone to face the danger, but they still couldn't succeed. The atmosphere became stiff and cold. Buzz buzz. The faint buzzing sound was heard again. Mu Hongyu and Xinhu were both stunned. They realized that Gu Mingfeng's aura had suddenly increased. The black crystal in front of him shone even brighter. Mu Hongyu widened her eyes. Xinhu couldn't help but curse. F***CK. Gu Mingfeng, UF** King broke through to become a stage 4 warrior long ago. Boom. A terrifying power suddenly erupted from the black Xian formation crystal. Chu Luiyue gritted her teeth and stood up again, walking forward. She walked very slowly as blood continued to flow from her body. Every step she took would leave a shocking bloody footprint on the ground behind her. The black flying python looked down at her indifferently, and the murderous intent in its eyes grew stronger. Chu Liuyue's unwillingness to admit defeat had completely enraged it. But the more it was like this, the more it was unwilling to kill her. Chu Liuyue finally stopped. Then, she bent down and tried to bring the little thing that was lying on the ground, motionless. Up close, its body seemed to be trembling slightly from breathing. It was obviously still alive. Chu Liuyue immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Although it wasn't her demon beast, she didn't want it to die because of her. Especially, at the last critical moment, it chose to stand with her. Just as Chu Liuyue's hand was about to touch it, a powerful wave suddenly swept over. Chu Liuyue was sent flying again. This time, the black flying python finally moved. It flapped its wings and quickly flew towards Chu Liuyue. Then, it opened its bloody mouth as if it could swallow the heavens and the earth. Chu Liuyue almost fainted from this blow, and she only relied on her last bit of willpower to stay awake. But when she spat out a mouthful of blood and forced her eyes open, she saw cold and sharp teeth. The black flying python was already in front of her. And it planned to swallow her. Chu Liuyue instinctively wanted to dodge, but she realized that half of her body was numb and she couldn't move at all. A trace of arrogance and mockery flashed across those vertical pupils. The weak could only be slaughtered. Chu Liuyue clenched her teeth. She couldn't die here. Buzz. The water droplet in her dantian suddenly started spinning. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 145. Almost at the same time that the water droplet started to move, the black flying python that was already near Chu Liuyue suddenly felt a sense of fatal danger. It looked at Chu Liuyue in shock. The contempt and ridicule in its eyes had completely disappeared and was replaced by an unconcealable deep fear. The next moment, it retreated in a panic. As if Chu Liuyue was an incredible and terrifying existence. All the surrounding magical beasts were stunned when they saw this situation. What was going on? Didn't it want to kill that lowly human? Why? Chu Liuyue suddenly regained her senses and realized that the water droplet in her dantian had moved. The vast power kept surging, and in the next moment, a small water droplet separated from it. Chu Liuyue suddenly felt her palm itch. She looked down and widened her eyes in shock. In the middle of her blood-stained palm, a small water droplet had unknowingly appeared. That water droplet was only the size of a soybean. It was completely transparent and smooth. It looked no different from an ordinary water droplet. However, one could only feel the terrifying power contained in it when they got close. Chu Liuyue stared blankly. This scene was very similar to the time when she had repaired her Yuan Meridian. The only difference was that the last water droplet had been used to repair her Yuan Meridian. This time, it was used to attack. Before she could react, that water droplet had already flown out. It went straight for the black flying python. The black flying python continued to retreat quickly, but the water droplet's speed was faster than it. In the blink of an eye, it was already in front of it. The black flying python flapped its wings and a red flame surged out. It formed a barrier in front of it. But in the next moment, a look of shock flashed across its eyes. Because that water droplet had directly passed through that layer of flame and did not even slow down. That water droplet's speed was too fast. If one looked closely, they could even see a small hole in the middle of the flame. Before the flame could rush over, the water droplet had already passed through and left. The black flying python was even more horrified. It had already sensed that something was wrong. The scene in front of it now proved its guess. Chu Luyue had an extremely powerful and mysterious power in her body. Even it might not be a match for this power. As it thought of this, it quickly retreated in an attempt to avoid this attack. That huge black and red figure moved crazily in the sky. Its route was messy and looked very strange. However, that water droplet seemed to have eyes. It followed closely and kept approaching. What's going on? Elder Sun and Si Ting rushed over silently, but they realized that something was wrong. They looked up and saw the black flying python swimming crazily in the sky. It looked as if he was hiding from something. Si Ting quickly looked up and frowned. Then, he shifted his gaze to the middle of the mountain. Actually, there was still some distance from the mountain, but they could already roughly see the situation there. Vaguely, a familiar figure could be seen halfway up the mountain. If it wasn't Chu Luyue, who else could it be? But at this moment, she was leaning against the mountain rock. Something seemed wrong. Si Ting's heart was in his mouth. He wanted to continue forward but was stopped by Elder Sunday. Si Ting, if we continue forward, we will reach the Fiend Beast Formation, which is the area controlled by the black flying python. If we go in, it won't be so easy to come out. Wait here. I will go and check it out. Si Ting's thin lips moved as if he wanted to say something. But when he saw Elder Sun's determined expression, he swallowed the words in his throat. Yes. After Sun Zhongyan finished speaking, he moved forward. Bang! A muffled sound was suddenly heard. Elder Sun and Si Ting were both shocked. They looked in the direction of the sound and saw that there was a hole in the ground not far away in the forest. Soon after, a hand suddenly stretched out from below. The two of them were alarmed. Elder Sun shouted sternly. Who is it? The person below seemed to be shocked as well. He quickly retracted his hand. But very quickly, a figure jumped out of the hole. It was a young man. He was tall and burly, and his skin was dark. There were wounds all over his body, and blood stains covered his entire body. He looked extremely pathetic. However, he was wearing Tianlu Academy's uniform. Elder Sun heaved a sigh of relief. The moment the young man came out, he immediately looked at Elder Sun and Si Ting. When he saw their faces clearly, he could not help but be stunned. Elder Sun. The worry and doubt in his heart disappeared. He immediately turned around and shouted into the hole. Hong Yu. Ming Feng. Come out quickly. The person outside is Elder Sun. Elder Sun and Si Ting finally understood when they heard these two names. This was Chu Liyue's team. Mu Hongyu and Gu Mingfeng quickly walked out from below. They were also in a sorry state and looked very pathetic. Elder Sun's gaze quickly swept across the three of them. He could not help but frown. What happened to you? How did you all get so severely injured? Just as he finished speaking, he saw that Mu Hongyu was carrying a golden mane bear cub in her arms. "This is, elder son, we were harmed by Gu Mingzhu and were chased by the golden mane bear. It was not easy for us to kill it and survive." Mu Hongyu's simple sentence summarized everything that had happened in the past day and night. When Old Master Sun and Si Ting heard this, they were both shocked. Golden mane bear. That was a 4th-grade fiend. The few of them could actually kill it. Mu Hongyu nodded. "This little fellow is the cub of the golden mane bear. I carried it to be my fiend." Old Master Sun wanted to ask more, but Si Ting suddenly spoke in an indifferent tone. "Only the 3 of you?" Sun Hu immediately said. "Yes. The 3 of us separated from Lu Yu. She said she would meet us outside the mountain." "Where is she?" As Sun Hu spoke, he realized that there was no sign of Chu Luyue around. Si Ting clenched his fists in his sleeves. "She is not here." On the other side, Gu Mingfeng had already realized that something was wrong. He looked around quietly and finally saw a familiar figure in the middle of the mountain. "She is there." At this moment, she was obviously surrounded by countless fiends. But this was not the scariest thing. Gu Mingfeng stared at the huge figure in the sky. A black flying python. No wonder Chu Luyue hasn't appeared until now. She's clearly in a dead end. Elder Sun did not ask about the situation. He quickly said to Si Ting, "Wait here. If there is anything strange, take action immediately. Protect the 3 of them first. I have already informed the other teachers to send them out." Si Ting nodded. "Don't worry, teacher." Elder Sun nodded and turned to leave. However, just as he took a step, the black flying python in the sky suddenly screamed crazily. It seemed to be in extreme pain. After moving crazily in the air, it suddenly charged towards the middle of the mountain. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 146. The water droplet quickly pierced through the black flying python's abdomen. It was only a small droplet, but it was extremely powerful. It left a fist-sized bloody hole on the black flying python's body. The hard scales were easily shattered, and blood and flesh splattered everywhere. The black flying python had never suffered such a loss before. It hissed in pain and hated Chu Luyue even more. The magical beasts that were watching at the foot of the mountain were shocked when they saw this scene. To them, the black flying python was the most powerful existence. It was the king that they had to submit to. But now, it was injured by a human. The magical beast started to get restless. Some of the magical beasts at the outermost periphery started to retreat hesitantly. They were all quite intelligent. When they saw this scene, they naturally realized that Chu Luyue was not so easy to deal with. For their own sake, it was better to stay away for the time being. Of course, most of the magical beasts continued to guard here, watching the black flying python in midair. Sensing those gazes, the black flying python was even more furious. It had been the king of Wanling Mountain for many years. But now, because of Chu Luyue, its position was on the verge of collapse. If it lost to Chu Luyue in front of everyone today, it would no longer have any prestige to speak of. Thinking of this, the black flying python's eyes flashed with a trace of madness. Then, it charged towards Chu Luyue again. Boom! It swung its long tail. Chu Luyue narrowly dodged it. The mountain rocks behind her were instantly shattered, and gravel flew everywhere. Although she had barely dodged this attack, the wounds on her body were getting more and more painful. Chu Luyue turned around and looked at her left shoulder. The other injuries were not important. The key was that the bones in her shoulder and back were broken when she hit the mountain rocks. She was afraid that she would not be able to hold on for much longer. She had to find a way to escape as soon as possible. As she thought of this, she dodged to the side. The black flying python seemed to have gone crazy as it followed closely behind. Everywhere Chu Luiyue passed by, there was a mess behind her. Bang! A dull sound was suddenly heard. The commotion behind her stopped for a moment. Chu Luiyue turned around and saw that the wound on the black flying python's abdomen had widened again. It was as if it had experienced another attack. It was in so much pain that it curled up into a ball. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. This was actually the power of the water droplet. The black heaven-devouring python struggled in pain, and the chaotic energy caused the surrounding rocks to shatter. Now was the chance to leave. Chu Luiyue turned around. She had just taken 2 steps when she suddenly felt a hand reaching over from the side. She immediately turned her head and looked back. His gaze was as sharp as a dagger, causing the other party to stop in fear. However, Chu Luiyue had already seen the other party's face clearly. Gu Mingzhu. At this time, Gu Mingzhu was covered in blood. Her face seemed to have been scratched a few times. Her hair was disheveled and she looked panicked. She looked very miserable. She stared at Chu Luiyue closely and anxiously said, "Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue, help me. Take me with you." Chu Luiyue didn't say anything. She glanced at her and guessed what she had experienced. She turned around and left expressionlessly. Gu Mingzhu didn't expect Chu Luiyue to be so heartless. She panicked even more. "Chu Luiyue. Why didn't you abandon me? We are from the same sect. If you treat me like this, in the future," Chu Luiyue didn't stop and turned a deaf ear to her. It was already difficult for her to protect herself. If Gu Mingzhu was added, she would be dead for sure. Why did she have to bring such a burden with her? Gu Mingzhu turned around and looked at the black flying python that was struggling in pain. She bit her lip. Even if she didn't want to admit it, she knew that she only had a chance of survival if she followed Chu Luiyue. She searched for a long time just now, but she couldn't find the Xian Formation black crystal that was her trump card. She could only bite the bullet and go down the mountain, thinking that she might be able to avoid those demonic beasts and leave safely. But she didn't expect to be discovered by them not long after she left. She almost died in their hands. She had no choice but to come back again. As expected, those demonic beasts didn't come up again. They were probably intimidated by the black flying python's pressure. Although they didn't come up, they didn't leave either. They blocked all the way down the mountain. I don't know what method Chu Luiyue used, but she actually temporarily suppressed the black flying python's attack. I must leave with her. Thinking of this, she quickly followed Chu Luiyue. However, Chu Luiyue suddenly turned around and looked at her coldly. "Although I'm injured now, it's still easy to kill you. If you want to live a little longer, you better not provoke me." Gu Mingzhu was shocked by the undisguised murderous intent in her tone. After a while, she reacted. Chu Luiyue was actually threatening her. At this time, Chu Luiyue didn't care about their relationship as fellow disciples and actually said such words. "Chu Luiyue. Are you forcing me to my death?" Gu Mingzhu screamed in disbelief. Chu Luiyue sneered. "When you lured the golden mane bear over, you should have thought of this day." After saying that, she didn't stay any longer and turned to leave. Gu Mingzhu was furious. Her hatred towards Chu Luiyue had reached its peak. What a good Chu Luiyue. She obviously had the means to help, but she was still so heartless and wanted to kill her. Since this was the case, don't blame her for being heartless. Chu Luiyue had just taken 2 steps when she suddenly felt a cold wind coming from behind her. She quickly dodged and a stone flew past her ear. The stone was just broken and had sharp edges. More importantly, the stone was aimed at the wound on her back. If she hadn't dodged quickly, the stone might have hit her broken shoulder. Chu Luiyue frowned and turned around. Gu Mingzhu. Youth. Before she could finish speaking, Gu Mingzhu suddenly pounced on her. Chu Luiyue raised her leg and kicked her hard in the chest. Gu Mingzhu fell heavily and spat out a mouthful of blood. However, she gritted her teeth and crawled over, hugging Chu Luiyue's leg tightly. She turned around and screamed at the black flying python, "I'll help you hold her back. Can't you spare my life? You just want her life anyway, right? Can you not kill me?" A cold glint appeared in Chu Luiyue's eyes. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 147. The situation there doesn't seem to be right. Elder Sun noticed that not long after the black-winged heaven-devouring python charged towards the mountain peak, it suddenly stopped. From afar, it looked very strange. "I'll go there now. You guys must be careful here." After Elder Sun reminded them, he quickly left and headed straight for the mountain. Mu Hongyu watched in a daze, her eyes red. If it wasn't for us. Lu Yu wouldn't have, she choked and couldn't continue speaking. Big drops of tears kept falling. She had always been competitive and never cried in front of others. She always felt that she was weak. But now, she couldn't care less. The guilt and sadness in her heart were like seawater that surrounded her, making it hard for her to breathe. Xinhu's face was also very pale. In the end, he walked to the side and punched the tree. Gu Mingfeng was the calmest one. "She will be fine." Hearing this, everyone turned to look at him. Mu Hongyu couldn't help but ask. "Really? Mingfeng, how can you be so sure?" Gu Mingfeng looked calm and didn't say anything. How could such a decisive and intelligent woman allow him to fall into such a passive state? Her abilities were definitely not what they had seen before. She was too mysterious, as if she knew everything. Didn't it mean that she could escape unscathed after offending the crown prince and the Chu family? Deep in his heart, he had an inexplicable confidence in her. Even though he didn't know where this confidence came from. But, they just had to wait. Si Ting glanced at him, a dark glint flashing across his long and sharp eyes. Then, he retracted his gaze and looked at the mountain. His hands slowly clenched in his sleeves. He also knew that Chu Luiyue was hiding her abilities, but that was a 7th-grade black flying python. What did she have to do to return safely? Elder Sun approached silently and soon reached the foot of the mountain. As he was worried that he would attract attention, he didn't dare to walk in the air. He could only hide in the forest. Although he wasn't discovered, the foot of the mountain and half of the mountain were occupied by fiends. If he continued forward, he would definitely be discovered. Elder Sun looked at the group of demonic beasts in front of him, and he was secretly anxious. The entire mountain had already been surrounded. If he wanted to break through from the outside, it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Not to mention the black-winged heaven-devouring python, just the demonic beasts outside attacking together would be difficult for him to handle. However, Chu Luiyue and the others were still up there. He found a secluded spot with a better view and looked up the mountain again. From here, the situation above could be seen even more clearly. However, with just a glance, Elder Sun's heart skipped a beat. Halfway up the mountain, it was chaos. Chu Luiyue and the black heaven-swallowing python were confronting each other from afar. The black-winged heaven-swallowing python curled up into a ball and continuously flung out its crazy power. It looked extremely terrifying. On the other side, Chu Luiyue seemed to want to leave, but he was stopped by another person who hugged his leg tightly. Elder Sun took a closer look and realized that the person was Gu Mingzhu. What was she doing? Since she was also here, why didn't she leave with Chu Luiyue? Instead, she was holding her back. It looked like not only did she not help her fellow disciple, Chu Luiyue, but she was also helping the black heaven-swallowing python. Elder Sun was furious and wanted to rush over immediately. This Gu Mingzhu was really crazy. Chu Luiyue wanted to shake off Gu Mingzhu, but Gu Mingzhu seemed determined to hold her back in exchange for a chance to survive. Although the running and torture these few days had consumed most of her energy, it did not cause her too much injuries. Compared to Chu Luiyue, she was even better. Therefore, under her persistence, Chu Luiyue was actually unable to shake her off several times. On the other side, the wound on the black heaven-swallowing python's body kept expanding. However, as the water droplet's power was gradually depleted, it could finally breathe. It raised its head, and its vertical eyes were filled with sinister resentment. Even Gu Mingzhu was shocked when she saw it. She was even more afraid and shouted even more urgently. I'll help you hold off Chu Luiyue. You let me go, okay? I beg you. The black heaven-swallowing python endured the pain and hissed. Chu Luiyue felt a buzzing sound in her ears. It was as if a small mountain had suddenly pressed down on her shoulders. The strong pressure made it difficult for her to move. Her heart sank. This black heaven-swallowing python seemed to have recovered. Next, it would probably take revenge crazily. At this moment, she had used up all her energy and had no strength to fight back. She lowered her gaze and looked at the black heaven-swallowing python's abdomen. There was a huge wound there. It was dripping with blood and looked very terrifying. It was left by that water droplet. She secretly gritted her teeth. If there was another water droplet, she would definitely win. Just as this thought flashed through her mind, the black heaven-swallowing python suddenly moved. This time, it did not go forward directly. Instead, it rose into the air. It flapped its wings and a strong wind blew. It suddenly opened its mouth. A sharp whistle pierced through the clouds and fog. Chu Luiyue's heart trembled and a strong sense of uneasiness welled up. The next moment, the originally clear sky suddenly darkened. A circular black hole appeared on top of its head. The surrounding drifting clouds were rapidly dragged into it. As those things kept pouring in, the black hole also kept expanding. Soon, it had expanded to the size of the entire mountain. Not long after, the gravel on the mountain swayed and started to fly up one after another. Finally, they were all swallowed by the vortex. Chu Luiyue's heart harshly sank. This was the black heaven-swallowing python's ultimate killer move, heaven swallowing. Using this move consumed a lot of its energy. But at this moment, it was clearly planning to go all out. Chu Luiyue kicked Gu Mingzhu away and then stabbed the dagger into the mountain wall beside her. A strong suction force swept over. Gu Mingzhu's body flew up uncontrollably. At this moment, she finally realized that something was wrong. Once she was swallowed by that strange black hole, she would definitely die. She hurriedly looked around and wanted to grab something, but it was already too late. No. I can't die. I've already helped you hold back Chu Luiyue just now. Why do you still want to kill me? Gu Mingzhu was in pain and panic. Her voice was shrill. The black heaven-swallowing python did not even look at her. It was not interested in such an ant at all. Gu Mingzhu felt that the force on her body was getting stronger and stronger. She could not help but raise her head. Only then did she realize that she was already in front of the black hole. It was pitch black inside, like an abyss. Once she entered, she would be doomed eternally. Her face was pale. She wanted to escape, but it was futile. No, the next moment, her body was completely swallowed up. In an instant, it was as if thousands of blades were crushing her body. An extremely shrill and miserable cry reverberated through the mountain. However, it quickly dissipated without a trace. Crack! A crack suddenly appeared on the mountain wall where Chu Liuyue's dagger was. Her body slid forward uncontrollably. The black heaven-swallowing python hissed again. The black hole in the sky spun even more crazily. The mountain wall beside Chu Liyue suddenly collapsed. She lost her foothold and was instantly swept away by the terrifying power. She was dragged towards the terrifying vortex. A hint of satisfaction flashed in the black heaven-swallowing python's eyes. As long as it crushed Chu Liyue looked at the darkness that was getting closer and closer. She could even see the black force entwining with each other. The next moment, her body was completely swallowed up. The darkness that made one despair surged from all directions. However, just as the surrounding force was about to strangle her to death, a white figure suddenly appeared. A slender and fair hand tore through the boundless darkness and gripped her tightly. That hand was as warm and cool as usual, but Chu Liyue suddenly felt very hot. The scorching temperature spread from the point of contact all the way to the bottom of her heart. The next moment, she fell into a warm and broad embrace. The violent and terrifying force was instantly isolated outside. She had not seen the person's face clearly, but that familiar cold fragrance made her feel inexplicably at ease. She could not help but raise her head. Rongxiu. In the darkness, she could not see his face, but she was incomparably certain that it was him. The person who held her in his arms laughed softly, as if he was very happy. Chu Liyue could even clearly feel the vibration of his chest. Your eyesight is much better. You don't need to look to know that it's this prince. Chu Liyue's ears suddenly felt hot. It was dark here and she could not see anything, but he deliberately said that she had good eyesight. He was clearly making fun of her. If she was not too familiar with him, how could she recognize him with just a hand and an embrace? Why did you come? It's too dangerous here. At this moment, Chu Liyue remembered that Rongxiu had directly entered the black vortex with her. Rongxiu's hand gently brushed her back and shoulder. It was sticky to the touch. She did not know how much blood she had lost. His heart seemed to be ruthlessly stabbed by something, and his movements paused. It's precisely because it's dangerous that I came. Digression, February. In view of the fact that His Highness Princely must appear today, the update will be late. Cough cough, there will be a 5th update later. Rongxiu, ha. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 148. Chu Liyue was held in his arms. She could clearly feel his heart beating in his chest and his breath on her forehead when he spoke. He said that it was precisely because it was dangerous that he had to come. This sentence was said so lovingly, but so naturally. It was as if it was the most natural thing for him to do. However, everyone in this world cherished their lives. Who would do so much for another person without reservation? Even to the extent of disregarding the danger, regardless of life or death. Chu Liyue's hand suddenly clenched the front of his clothes and said in a low voice. Rongxiu, I really thought I was going to die just now. That kind of overwhelming darkness, that kind of helplessness and despair. She had experienced it once and it was deeply engraved in her mind. She could not forget it. Whenever she thought of it, her heart would ache. Even her bones hurt. Rongxiu didn't dare to touch her wound. He carefully held her waist with one hand and caressed her hair with the other as he said softly, "Don't worry. I'm here. Don't be afraid." Chu Liyue's eyes suddenly became hot. Her heart ached and she felt uncomfortable. If at that time, someone also said to her, "I'm here. Don't be afraid," the flames crazily spread through her body. It was too painful. She closed her eyes and suddenly moved closer. She gently pressed her forehead against his chest. Rongxiu suddenly stopped. Rongxiu, why me? A muffled voice came. This was not the first time Chu Luiyue asked this question. But this time, it was obviously different. Rongxiu kissed her forehead and whispered in her ear. His voice was low and gentle. You're worth it. The person in his arms did not speak. Rongxiu said word by word. I have a lifetime to prove that you're worth it. This time, she did not believe. This time, she did not believe. However, one day, she would believe. Chu Luiyue still did not speak. Rongxiu knew her character best. He knew that she could not completely trust him in a short time, but he had enough patience. Hold on tight. Chu Luiyue guessed that he was going to break out of the encirclement here, so she obediently hugged his lean waist. Although he knew that Rongxiu had been hiding his strength, his opponent was a black flying python after all. It would not be easy to deal with it. She thought for a moment and couldn't help but ask, how confident are you? Rongxiu was about to speak when he felt the arm around his waist was exceptionally soft and warm. The person in his arms was at the age of budding, the time when a young girl was blooming her radiance. The corners of his mouth curled into a smile. I am confident, but it will take some time. Old Sun had a panoramic view of the situation halfway up the mountain. His heart sank to the bottom. The black-winged heaven-devouring python was determined to kill Chu Luiyue. It had even used such a killing move. Seeing Chu Luiyue being swallowed by the black vortex, Old Sun's back was drenched in cold sweat. No way. He must do it. Although there was no chance of winning, he couldn't just watch Chu Luiyue die like this. Old Sun gritted his teeth and held his breath. Silver light flickered on his fingertips as he was about to set up a Xian formation. However, at this moment, there was another change in the sky. A snow-white magical beast with a muscular body suddenly appeared. It looked like a lion, but Old Sun didn't recognize what it was. In his memory, there didn't seem to be such an existence. However, one thing was undeniable: this was a high-level demonic beast. It came from the horizon at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, it had rushed to the front of the black-winged heaven-devouring python. When it saw the newcomer, the hatred in the black-winged heaven-devouring python's eyes almost overflowed. It looked as if it had accumulated hatred for a long time. Shue stared at it and was also very angry. A few years ago, it had come here and fought with this fellow. At that time, the black-winged heaven-devouring python was still a 6th-grade demonic beast and was beaten black and blue by it. It didn't expect that a few years later, this fellow would actually attack Chu Luiyue. It was really tired of living. Roar! Shue's angry roar almost shook the forest. All the demonic beasts felt a vast pressure coming and couldn't help but be filled with fear. This demonic beast that suddenly appeared seemed to be even stronger than the black-winged heaven-devouring python. The level suppression in their bones and blood caused them to crawl on the ground, not daring to move. When the black-winged heaven-devouring python saw this scene, it was filled with hatred. With a swing of its long tail, it wrapped around Shue. Shue quickly jumped and dodged its attack in a few seconds, arriving in front of it. Then, its claws slammed towards the black-winged heaven-devouring python's head. Paw! Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. The black-winged heaven-devouring python's huge body flew out uncontrollably and smashed heavily on the mountain. Several cracks appeared on the mountain. Half of the mountain was on the verge of collapse. Old Sun was dumbfounded. This is two high-level demonic beasts fighting. Roar! Shue approached again. Without waiting for it to get up, it pressed down and beat it up again. With a claw, it directly tore off a large piece of its scales and flesh. The black-winged heaven-devouring python hissed in pain. The strength of both sides intertwined and collided fiercely. Rumble. The huge mountain was actually starting to collapse. Countless demonic beasts at the foot of the mountain started to flee in all directions. The entire Wanling Mountain was in chaos. Old Sun wanted to take advantage of the chaos and go forward, but he bumped into a group of golden-eyed demonic beasts. They seemed to have been provoked by something. When they saw Old Sun, they rushed forward without hesitation. They seemed to want to risk their lives with him. Old Sun had a bad feeling. These demonic beasts seemed to have gone crazy. He was entangled with the golden-eyed demonic beasts. He wanted to break through the encirclement to save people, but these demonic beasts seemed to not care about their lives and trapped him tightly. Old Sun hurriedly looked up and saw the black vortex in the sky explode. He suddenly paused, and his face turned pale. On the other side, Si Ting and the rest also saw this scene and were all speechless. Mu Hongyu turned around and covered her mouth, but her shoulders could not help but tremble. They are here. A few teachers suddenly rushed over, looking anxious. Retreat. The demonic beasts in Wanling Mountain are crazy. We have to leave as soon as possible. No. Lu Yu is still there. Shi Tsinhu roared angrily. Before he could finish speaking, he passed out. A teacher supported him and said with a frown, "Take them all away. We can't stay here for long." Si Ting suddenly turned around and walked into the depths of the forest. Digression, would you believe me if I said that I got a disease that makes me sleepy whenever I look at a computer? Chapter 149. Si Ting. Stop right there. A teacher quickly stepped forward and blocked his way. It's so dangerous over there. How can you go? Si Ting's handsome face seemed to be covered with a layer of frost, and he looked exceptionally cold. The teacher was stunned when he saw him like this, but he still insisted. Now that two high-level fiends are fighting, the entire Wanling Mountain is going to be in chaos. If you go now, you'll just die. Even if something happens, there's still Elder Sun. We have to leave as soon as possible. Si Ting said coldly. There are still people who haven't come out. What time is it now? How can you still care about others? If this drags on, we might not even be able to leave safely. When the teacher behind them saw this, he couldn't stand it anymore and asked with a frown. He frowned and asked, Si Ting, you've always been calm and collected. What's wrong with you today? Si Ting's lips moved, and he clenched his jaw. Boom. 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 The black whirlpool in the sky completely collapsed and turned into countless streaks of black light that scattered in all directions. At the same time, there were all kinds of fiends' sharp roars, which made one panic. Let's go. The teacher did not hesitate and grabbed Si Ting's shoulder. A few teachers joined forces and forcefully brought them away. Not long after they turned and left, there was a loud boom. Si Ting's heart skipped a beat. He looked back and saw that the mountain had completely collapsed. The battle between Xue Xue and the black flying python was very intense. The violent force caused the entire mountain to collapse, and the forest was in a mess. However, if someone could take a closer look, they would realize that this battle was completely one-sided. The black flying python was at a complete disadvantage. It did not even have the strength to retaliate. After a few rounds of fighting, its body was already covered in injuries. Its originally beautiful and hard scales were almost all pulled out. There were a few bloody holes in its abdomen, and blood was gushing out. Even its head was smashed open and dripping with blood. It looked very miserable. Its initial arrogance had completely dissipated. Only endless regret and fear were left in its eyes. It really regretted it. Ever since it was beaten black and blue by Xue Xue, it had been full of resentment and brooding. This Wanling mountain range was its territory. How could it allow others to behave atrociously? In the past few years, it had been holding its breath and cultivating in seclusion. Finally, it had broken through from rank 6 to rank 7. Now that it had met Zhang Xian once more, it had made up its mind to wipe away the humiliation it had suffered in the past. However, who could have known that Zhang Xian's strength had increased even more than it had? Previously, it was still able to withstand a few dozen moves, but this time, it was completely defeated. Most importantly, it was in front of so many magical beasts in Wanling Mountain. He had completely lost all his face. Paw! Xue Xue bit its tail and flung it out. The black flying python drew a long trail of blood on the ground before finally smashing into a pile of rocks. Its body was covered in dust and blood. It was on the verge of death, unable to move, as if it would lose all signs of life in the next moment. Xue Xue looked at it, but there was still anger in its eyes. From the beginning to the end, it did not take this thing seriously, but it did not expect it to hold a grudge. He even wanted to kill Chu Luiyue. If he didn't hit it, who would he hit? Just as it was about to continue its lesson, it suddenly paused and turned around. In the void, there was a transparent ripple. Soon after, a tall and slender figure walked out from within. It was Rongxiu. He was carrying a woman in his arms. It was Chu Luiyue. Xue Xue's eyes were filled with guilt and pity when it saw the bloodstains on Chu Luiyue's clothes and the shocking wounds. It quickly ran over, wanting to take a closer look at her. Rongxiu glanced at it. Xue Xue suddenly stopped in its tracks and lowered its head in self-reproach. Chu Luiyue's eyes suddenly lit up. Only then did she realize that they had already escaped from the black whirlpool. She looked at Rongxiu in a daze. He actually, really did it. Just what level had his strength reached? Sensing the movement beside her, she turned her head and saw Xue Xue. Then, she saw the black flying python lying in a pile of rocks not far away. It was unknown whether it was dead or alive. Its body was full of wounds and there was almost no part of it that was unscathed. It could be seen how ruthless Xue Xue was. Chu Luiyue opened her mouth. Xue Xue was actually so powerful. It could actually kill a 7th-grade demonic beast to such an extent, but it was unscathed. When this matter is over, you can go back and receive your punishment. Rongxiu said lightly. Xue Xue let out a low whimper and lowered her head even more. Chu Luiyue tugged at Rongxiu's clothes. All right. How are you going to punish Xue Xue? It was the one who dealt with the black flying python. Rongxiu narrowed his eyes. It stayed with you for too long, so you have a trace of its aura on you. This black flying python has a grudge with it. It sensed its aura on you, so it attacked you. Chu Luiyue was stunned for a moment. So, it was because of this. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She was puzzled about the black flying python's hostility towards her. She didn't expect it to be because of this. Forget it, Xue Xue didn't do it on purpose. It can only be said that it was too coincidental. Chu Luiyue liked Xue Xue very much. Although it caused such a blunder, she couldn't blame Xue Xue at the end of the day. Xue Xue felt even more ashamed and blamed itself. Its tail also hung down. Yes, but I only stayed with Xue Xue for a short period of time. It's not my demonic beast. Why do I have its aura on me? Chu Luiyue muttered doubtfully. Even if there was, it should be very faint. Logically speaking, it shouldn't cause the black flying python to have such a strong murderous intent. Shue's body stiffened. Rongxiu's eyes darkened. There seemed to be a layer of fog between his eyebrows. He couldn't see clearly and said lightly, "It's probably because we spent too much time together. Just try not to meet in the future." Shui looked up in shock. It couldn't believe that it had been betrayed just like that. During those nights, it had carefully brought Rongxiu's power over and then carefully injected it into Chu Liuyue's body to nourish and heal her Yuan meridian. Even if it didn't take credit, it should have worked hard. Why did it turn against its demonic beast now? The aura in Chu Liuyue's body didn't belong to it. It was clearly Rongxiu's. It and Rongxiu had a master-servant relationship. Their auras were connected. It was fine that the black flying python had mistaken Chu Liyue, but it actually misunderstood Chu Liyue. Shui wanted to protest, but it suddenly met Rongxiu's cold gaze. It immediately became obedient. Chu Liyue nodded and didn't pursue the matter. She looked around and realized that the originally steep mountain peak had been leveled to the ground. She sighed in her heart. The power of a battle between high-level demonic beasts was indeed shocking. Rongxiu found a clean place and put her down. He pressed one hand on her back and continuously injected force into her. Chu Liyue shook her head. "These are all superficial wounds. You don't have to do this." Rongxiu's other hand gently covered her eyes. "Rest for a while. We'll leave when you're done packing." Chu Liyue's vision darkened. She couldn't help but ask, "Pack what?" Rongxiu's lips curled up slightly, but the smile didn't reach the corners of his eyes. "Of course, it's time to clean it up. Of course, it's time to clean it up." Chapter 150. Outside Wanling Mountain, Tianlu Academy's students and teachers were waiting in silence. The atmosphere was stagnant, and no one said a word. The silence was suffocating. Some students were seriously injured and in a coma. Although some were fine, they were injured. At a glance, almost no one came out unscathed. Time ticked by, and the waiting became more and more unbearable. Occasionally, some people would look at Wanling Mountain. Their faces were no longer filled with anticipation and excitement. Instead, they were filled with fear. Who would have thought that something like this would happen in Wanling Mountain? Now, it seemed like it still made people feel fearful. Suddenly, the sound of wind breaking could be heard. A few figures quickly flew out of the forest. Everyone looked over. The teachers standing at the very front all revealed joyful expressions. "You're finally back." There seemed to be a huge commotion in Wanling Mountain just now. What happened? That black flying python seemed to have used a killer move. It was too dangerous. Luckily, you came out in time. They were waiting outside, so they could not see the situation inside. They could only vaguely hear loud noises as if an intense battle had broken out. Two teachers went forward and handed Sinhu and Mu Hongyu to the people beside them to take care of. One of them sighed. "Don't mention it. That black flying python seemed to have gone crazy. It sent all the fiend beasts in the mountain range to surround that mountain. Mu Hongyu and the rest had a hard time escaping." Later on, another high-level magical beast appeared and fought with the black-winged heaven-swallowing python, raising the entire mountain to the ground. If we were any later, it would have been difficult for us to come out. What? An advanced fiend beast appeared. Everyone looked at each other, their hearts filled with shock. Didn't Elder Sun say that this place was the black flying python's territory? What was the advanced fiend beast that appeared later? It actually dared to fight with it head-on. We didn't see it clearly, but it was indeed very powerful. It was even more powerful than the black flying python. Everyone was speechless. The black flying python was a 7th-grade fiend beast, and it was extremely powerful. What kind of fiend beast was more powerful than it? It was an existence that only appeared in legends. They were really unlucky this time, to actually encounter such an opportunity. Where's Elder Sun? He didn't come back with you. Baichen glanced around and didn't see Elder Sun's figure, so he couldn't help but ask. The teachers looked a little embarrassed. After a while, someone said. Elder Sun went to that mountain alone to save people. We couldn't get in touch with him. How is that possible? Isn't that too dangerous? Baichen frowned, but a thought suddenly flashed through his mind. Wait a minute. Save people. In addition to Mu Hongyu and the others who had already returned, there was also, where are Chu Luiyue and Gu Mingzhu? The two of them are on that mountain. Master went to save them. Si Ting suddenly spoke. Everyone fell silent. Elder Sun was the strongest amongst them, but even he wasn't a match for the black-winged heaven-devouring python. If he went alone like this, it was simply, Elder Sun. A teacher inadvertently raised his head and saw a familiar figure walking out of the forest. He couldn't help but call out. Everyone hurriedly looked over. Baichen had just heaved a sigh of relief when he saw the bloodstains on Elder Sun's body. His expression changed, and he quickly rushed forward. Elder Sun. Are you injured? Elder Sun waved his hand. It's just a small injury. Baichen looked at his gloomy expression and suddenly felt uneasy. Elder Sun actually came back alone. Elder Sun. Lu Yu and Gu Mingzhu. Elder Sun shook his head tiredly and sighed. I'm useless. I didn't manage to save them in time. They were all sucked into the black-winged heaven-devouring python's killer move. The moment he said this, the crowd fell silent. If even Elder Sun said this, then it was almost certain that the two of them were dead. How could they possibly be a match for the black-winged heaven-devouring python? Mu Hongyu suddenly stood up. I don't believe it. If he was alive, he wanted to see him. If he was dead, he wanted to see the corpse. I'll go find her. With that, she quickly walked forward. However, before she could take 2 steps, her vision turned black, and she fainted. A teacher at the side immediately went forward to check on her. Her internal and external injuries are very serious. In addition, she lost a lot of blood. It's already very difficult for her to hold on until now. She suddenly fainted because of the shock. Elder Sun, you don't have to worry too much. Give her some medicine later and let her rest more. She'll recover. Elder Sun nodded, but he still looked a little dazed. He was still regretting and blaming himself for not being able to save the two of them. Before coming, I should have checked clearly. If he had done more research and sensed that the situation in Wanling Mountain had changed, he definitely would not have brought so many students here directly, and there would not have been so many casualties. This was practically the most tragic hunt in Tianlu Academy in recent years. Elder Sun, don't blame yourself too much. No one can be sure about this kind of thing. Who knows what happened to the black-winged heaven-devouring python? It suddenly went crazy this time. Baichen consoled him, but he also felt terrible. He had always thought highly of Chu Luiyue. Moreover, he was the one in charge of her entrance exam. Although he was not her teacher, he had always cared about her. However, he did not expect that. Elder Sun, Wanling Mountain is in chaos now. Let's hurry back to the academy. A teacher finally could not help but say. How could Elder Sun not know what to do now? However, how was he going to explain to his uncle master when he returned? Even if it was out of selfishness, he did not want to see Chu Luiyue die here. After a moment of silence, he closed his eyes and finally said, inform everyone that Tianlu Academy is to return immediately. The elders and teachers quickly took action and left in batches. Even Sinhu and Mu Hongyu were taken away while they were unconscious. Gradually, most of the people had left. Ting walked to elder son's side and hesitated for a moment before asking, "Master, is what you said just now true?" Elder son looked at him with a complicated gaze. He could actually see through Ting's thoughts. However, he let out a long sigh and patted Ting's shoulder. The last glimmer of light in Ting's eyes completely dimmed. "Gu Mingfeng, it's time to go." A teacher saw that Gu Mingfeng was still standing there without moving, so he spoke up. Gu Mingfeng took a deep look in the direction of the mountain peak. There, the originally towering mountain peak had disappeared. Even though he was standing there, he could still feel the violent collapse of the mountain. They had agreed to meet outside the mountain, but now, even the mountain was gone. Perhaps in this life, he would never see that pair of clear and trusting eyes again. That teacher walked to his side. "I know that you are upset that your sister met with an accident. However, things have already come to this." Gu Mingfeng took a deep breath and turned to leave with that teacher. As the sun set in the west, everyone's figures disappeared from their original positions. Only the dense forest, under the illumination of the sunset, was strangely tranquil. A small stream extended from the forest and flowed down. The afterglow shone on it, and the water was clear and crystalline. Gradually, the stream seemed to be dyed red, and it looked exceptionally beautiful. Then, the red gradually became thicker and thicker, almost turning into a river of blood. The corpse of a golden-eyed demon beast was faintly discernible. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 151. Night fell, and a bright moon hung in the sky. The bright moonlight flowed down like water, and the branches and leaves of the trees swayed gently with the wind. The shadows cast by the trees were like seaweed swaying gently in the water, quiet and serene. Chu Luiyue was leaning against a thick tree. Beside her, Rong Xiao was also sitting on the ground, planning to help her clean her wounds. The most serious injury on her body was the broken bone in her shoulder. If it was not treated in time, it would not be good in the future. It was a good thing that even without her teaching, Rong Xiao seemed to be very familiar with this. His movements were gentle and quick. "I'm helping you set your bones. Bear with it," Rong Xiao said in a low voice as his slender hand gently pressed down on her shoulder. Chu Luiyue nodded. She had suffered this kind of injury countless times in her previous life, so it was nothing. Rong Xiao gently placed his hand on her shoulder and then pushed. Chu Luiyue's body trembled from the pain. Rong Xiao looked at her and saw that the young girl's face was pale. Because of the pain, her forehead was covered in sweat. But from beginning to end, she did not make a sound as she forcefully swallowed the pain. Rong Xiao's eyes were slightly cold. He felt a bit of regret in his heart that he did not properly torture that bastard before taking care of him. His movements were even more gentle as he took off his white coat. With a "chi-la" sound, he tore it into strips and wrapped Chu Luiyue's wounds. Chu Luiyue heard this sound and turned her head to look. She could not help but smile. "Your Highness, your clothes are very expensive. Isn't this too wasteful?" Rong Xiao knew that she was teasing him, so he also smiled. "It's no problem, it's just a piece of clothing. You can just compensate me with another one later." Chu Luiyue raised her brows. "You really don't want to suffer a loss. Your Highness is really stingy." Rong Xiao's movements paused as his smile deepened. "I've always been generous, but I'm stingy towards you." Chu Luiyue felt as if his heart was being gently rubbed by something. After this incident, an invisible barrier seemed to have been broken between her and Rong Xiao. Although neither of them said anything, their relationship did seem to be much closer than before. "I'm already used to His Highness' stinginess, but I'm curious about something. Why did you come so coincidentally?" This place was 2 days away from the Imperial capital, so it was absolutely impossible for Rongxiu to arrive here in an instant. That meant that it was very likely that he had arrived here a long time ago. Rongxiu's expression did not change. Rongxiu said that she wanted to hunt a demonic beast, and it just so happened that there was a demonic beast tied here, so I came to take a look personally. I plan to choose a suitable one and bring it back to her. Rongxiu was the current 8th princess. She was already 13 years old this year, which was indeed the age to find a magical beast to hunt. But, this kind of thing could be left to his subordinates. Why did he have to do it himself? Chu Luiyue smiled faintly. You really care about the 8th princess. Rongxiu did not mind that she had seen through him. Instead, he looked at her steadily. Yes, I do care about her very much. It went without saying who he was referring to. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat, and she did not know how to reply. At this moment, Shueshue finally came back. It walked to Chu Luiyue and put down the thing in its mouth. It was the blood ferret. When Shueshue left earlier, Chu Luiyue thought that since it was a high-level demonic beast, it should be very sensitive to the aura of other demonic beasts, so she asked it to help find this little thing. After the mountain collapsed, she actually did not have much hope in her heart, but this little thing risked its life for her, so she still remembered it. She did not expect to really find it. But at this moment, the little thing was lying on the ground, motionless. Chu Luiyue checked it and found that it was still breathing weakly. She immediately heaved a sigh of relief. It was still alive. Sensing her touch, the little thing's tail suddenly moved, and then it slowly opened its eyes. Those round eyes clearly reflected Chu Luiyue's face. It looked at her in a daze and blinked its eyes, as if it had not reacted. Chu Luiyue carefully picked it up and pinched its ears. It's okay, now we are safe. Only then did the little thing realize that it was not dreaming. Its eyes widened, and then it hugged Chu Luiyue's thumb and cried. It thought that it was already dead. It thought that it would never see her again. Chu Luiyue saw that it was crying so sadly, and she found it funny and sad at the same time. Okay, come back with me. In the future, this kind of thing will not happen again, okay? This little thing was very congenial to her, and she liked it very much. Now that it was still alive, it was best to bring it back. Although it could not be treated as a magical beast to hunt, it could be treated as a pet magical beast to accompany her. When the little thing heard this, it realized that it could always be by her side in the future, and it could not help but cry even louder. After a long time, it stopped, but its body was still sobbing, and its eyes and nose were red. It looked pitiful and cute. It saw that Chu Luiyue's shoulder was injured, so it obediently stayed by her side. Rongxiu looked at it from the side and suddenly said, "It's really lucky." Chu Luiyue was in a good mood at this moment, and her eyes were curved. Yes. Previously, in order to help me, it was attacked by the black flying python, and then the mountain collapsed. As Chu Luiyue spoke, she suddenly felt that something was wrong. This little thing was only a third-grade magical beast, and the kind that did not have much fighting power. How could it have withstood the black flying python's angry attack? Moreover, after the entire mountain collapsed, the situation was so chaotic, but it actually survived safely. Chu Luiyue held it in her hand again and looked at it over and over again. The little thing seemed to be tickled, and it rolled around happily in her hand. Chu Luiyue was stunned. This little thing did not seem to be seriously injured. Other than a few scratches on its body, it was completely fine. Now that it was alive and kicking, who could imagine what it had gone through before? The most important thing was that Wanling Mountain was the black flying python's territory, and all the magical beasts here obeyed its orders due to the difference in level. The magical beast's attack was the best evidence. But this little thing seemed not to be affected. Not only did it not attack her together with the other magical beasts, but it also stood on her side and went against the black flying python. The more Chu Liyue thought about it, the more she found it strange. She carefully checked the little thing again, but did not find anything unusual. The little thing hugged her finger intimately, and its furry tail rubbed against her finger. Just as Chu Liyue was in a daze, Rongxiu suddenly stretched out his hand and took the little thing over. You need to rest now. Think about these things in the future. Chu Liyue felt that he was right, and she nodded. The little thing was suddenly forced away from the warm place, and it immediately woke up and stared fiercely at Rongxiu. Rongxiu glanced at it lightly. Humph. The little thing was frightened, and it immediately retracted its gaze, and obediently turned around to wait. Why do I smell blood on Xue Xue? Chu Liyue asked curiously. Although the smell was very faint, it was indeed there. And it was obviously stronger than the smell after the black flying python was killed. Xue Xue froze, and it turned around and lay on the ground, pretending that it did not hear anything. Rongxiu paused and quietly changed the topic. When you've recovered a little, we'll go back to the Imperial capital tomorrow, Huiyao said. You'll get a better reading experience from love. Chapter 152. 2 days later, the teachers and students returned to the academy, but they were not as excited and happy as they were when they left. The demonic beast riot in Wanling Mountain had caused many casualties. They were already very lucky to be able to come back alive, not to mention other things. The news quickly spread in the Imperial capital and caused a huge uproar. Peach Garden. Several elders and teachers gathered together. The atmosphere in the hall was very depressing. After a long time, Elder Sun sighed. Martial Uncle is in seclusion these days. When he comes out, I will report this matter and accept my punishment. Everyone looked at each other and comforted him. Elder Sun, this is indeed an accident. It's not your fault. Yes, Wanling Mountain has been very peaceful for decades. It's not the first time we went there to hunt demonic beasts. Who would have thought that this time? Elder Sun, if you didn't give the order to retreat in time, our casualties would be even greater. You don't have to blame yourself anymore. Elder Sun waved his hand, indicating that they didn't need to say any more. A mistake is a mistake. We have to clean up the mess now. Is the casualty list out? Wen Yan immediately said. It's done. Ignoring the minor injuries, 57 people are seriously injured, and 14 people are dead. Elder Sun slowly clenched his hand. Why are there so many? Didn't you say there were 8 people? Yes, there were indeed 10 people who died at the beginning. Later, Yi Qing found the bodies of the 2 missing people under a cliff somewhere. What about the other 2? Wen Yan carefully looked at Elder Sun's expression and lowered his voice. The remaining 2 are Chu Liyue and Gu Mingzhu. The mountain collapsed, and the 2 of them were swallowed into the black whirlpool of the black flying python. How could they survive? Therefore, the 2 of them were also included in the death list. Elder Sun was stunned when he heard their names. He was silent for a while. Inform their families. In addition, our academy will be fully responsible for this matter. Try your best to compensate them. Yes. Gu family. Slap. The crisp sound of a slap broke the silence in the room. Gu Mingfeng's head was tilted, and his face quickly became red and swollen. How did you take care of your sister? Why is she the only one who died when so many people are fine? Gu Mingfeng, explain it to me today. Otherwise, don't even think about leaving this house. The Gu family's patriarch, Gu Wenhui, was furious. He slapped Gu Mingfeng as if it wasn't enough, so he slapped him again. There was a clear palm print on Gu Mingfeng's face. He looked at Gu Wenhui expressionlessly. It was just a glance, and then he lowered his eyes. This was his so-called father. In his eyes, there was only Gu Mingzhu. As for him, he was just an eyesore. She was not in the same team as me, so I don't know how she died. How dare you lie? Gu Wenhui was so angry that he kicked Gu Mingfeng in the chest and shouted angrily. Her profound formation black crystal was used, but she didn't survive. Other than you, who else knows that she has this thing on her? You've always been jealous of her. This time, weren't you the one who stole her things and tried to kill her? How could I, Gu Wenhui, give birth to a thing that is worse than an animal like you? There was a numbing pain in his chest, and Gu Mingfeng's face was a little pale. Gu Wenhui used all his strength in this kick. If not for the fact that he was a mystic master and his physical strength was not that strong, this kick would have taken Gu Mingfeng's life. I don't know how she died. Gu Mingfeng repeated mechanically and indifferently. Besides, even elder son couldn't save her. Father, do you think that a profound formation black crystal can save her? Gu Wenhui was so angry that he laughed. Good, good, good. You even know how to talk back now. Your wings have hardened. Why aren't you the one who died? Why aren't you the one who died? Gu Mingfeng's eyelids twitched violently. In an instant, he felt that a part of his heart had completely collapsed. Ha! I should have seen it clearly. What was he? He was just a lowly existence that Gu Wenhui saw as a stain. Now, this so-called father wanted nothing more than to use his life in exchange for Gu Mingzhu's. Why? Was it because his birth mother was of lowly birth? Was it because he was the product of Gu Wenhui's drunken stupor? Gu Mingfeng wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and slowly stood up. His gentle face was expressionless, but his entire body was frighteningly cold. When Gu Wenhui saw him like this, he was even angrier. Get lost. You're not part of the Gu family anymore. Gu Mingfeng looked up. Since you're chasing me out, I'll naturally listen to you. From now on, I won't step into the Gu family anymore so that I won't be an eyesore to you. Then, he directly turned around and left. Gu Wenhui slapped the table into pieces. When Chu Ning received the news, he happened to be discussing important matters with Emperor Zhaoan in the palace. This matter had too many implications, so Tianlu Academy had sent someone to report it early in the morning. After Chu Ning heard it, it was as if he was struck by lightning. He couldn't recover his senses for a long time. When Emperor Zhaoan saw him like this, he could only sigh deeply and then let him go back to rest for a few days. Chu Ning didn't know how he walked out of the palace, nor did he know where he had walked to. Everything around him seemed to have faded away, and he was the only one left in the world. He had never felt that his footsteps were so heavy. Every step he took was extremely tiring, and he even felt heart-wrenching pain. However, he didn't dare to stop. He was afraid that once he stopped, the despair and pain would completely drown him. Hey! How can you walk like this? On the streets, he walked in a daze. Someone hurriedly walked past him and bumped into him. That person said in disgust, but when he saw Chu Ning's clothes, he immediately realized that he had offended an important person. Thus, he hurriedly shut his mouth and left. When he left, he was still talking to the person beside him. Yeah. Who would have thought that Tianlu Academy would have so many casualties this time? I heard that more than 10 people died. What a pity. They were all rare geniuses. Hey, they said that Chu Luyue, who just got in a while ago, seemed to have died as well. He's a genius among geniuses. So what? If he dies, he won't have a chance to come back to life. Chu Ning forced himself to stand up, lowered his head, and walked forward. Someone stood in front of him. He looked up slowly and took a while to recognize the person in front of him. Chu Yen. His face was filled with curiosity and pity as he enunciated each word clearly. Big brother, I heard that Chu Luiyue died. Oh, you will be alone in the future. What are you going to do? Love Network has a better reading experience. Chapter 153. When Chu Yan heard the news, he immediately rushed over to look for Chu Ning. As expected, he saw him in a daze. He finally let out the breath that he had been holding in all this time. Although you're no longer part of the Chu family, you're still my big brother. Something happened to Chu Luiyue, and as your younger brother, I'm really worried about you. Big brother, the dead can't come back to life. You have to restrain your grief. Chu Yan put on a sorrowful expression, but the pride and arrogance in his eyes were almost overflowing. Every word was like a knife that ruthlessly stabbed into Chu Ning's heart. It was as if his heart was going to be minced into pieces. Chu Ning used all the strength in her body to stand firm. She glared at him. Are you done? The suppression of a stage 5 warrior was not to be underestimated. Chu Yan subconsciously trembled when he glanced at him, and a sense of fear arose in his heart. However, he was in a good mood now, so he simply ignored it. Hey, big brother, why are you angry? You can't blame me for this. I'm just worried that you'll be too sad, so I'm here to console you. Think about how Chu Luiyue entered Tianlu Academy by passing all 3 assessments. He even booked the entire Phoenix restaurant to celebrate. How lively was that? At that time, who would have thought that things would turn out this way? Don't you think so? As Chu Yan spoke, he deliberately sighed. Originally, I thought that our Minmin wasn't outstanding enough and was much worse than Chu Luiyue. However, I didn't expect that this time, it was because she had just recovered that she was extra careful and avoided so many dangers. Big brother, you see, fortune and misfortune come hand in hand. It's really hard to say. Sometimes, some people are unparalleled, but who knows when they'll have to get lost. Chu Ning roared and kicked Chu Yan hard at the same time. Chu Yan was caught off guard and was kicked directly. In addition, his strength couldn't be compared to the current Chu Ning, so Chu Ning's angry kick directly broke his bones. Chu Yan fell to the ground, and his face was pale from the pain. Chu Ning's face was terrifyingly gloomy as he quickly walked forward. Chu Yan was struggling to stand up, but before he could, Chu Ning's foot had already mercilessly stepped on his wrist. Crack! The sound of bones breaking was especially crisp. Ah! Chu Yan cried out in pain and almost fainted. Chu Ning, on the other hand, grabbed him by the collar and punched him in the face. This mouth, this person. He didn't want to endure it for even a moment. The people at the side had already recognized the identity of these 2 people. At first, they didn't dare to stop the fight, but in the end, when they saw Chu Ning's eyes were scarlet red and he grabbed the unconscious Chu Yan and wildly beat him up, as if he was determined to beat him to death, some people carefully tried to stop the fight. Lord Chu Ning. Lord Chu Ning, please stop hitting him. If you continue hitting him, he will die. However, Chu Ning did not seem to care at all. Instead, he slammed Chu Yan's head onto the ground. It was good that he was dead. If he died, the Chu clan would come and collect his corpse. Thinking of this, Chu Ning's movements paused as he suddenly thought of something. Eunuch Min came to report that Wanling Mountain's peak had collapsed, and Er's corpse was nowhere to be found. However, if he was alive, he wanted to see him. If he was dead, he wanted to see his corpse. Even if he had to dig 3 feet into the ground of Wanling Mountain, he would still search for it. Chu Ning threw Chu Yan to the ground, turned around and left quickly. When he heard that Chu Ning was here, Elder's son personally went out to welcome him. When he saw Chu Ning covered in blood, he was shocked. Lord Chu Ning, what happened to you? Chu Ning stared at him. Elder son, I have a favor to ask. I want to go to Wanling Mountain to look for you, I heard that you were the last person to see her, so I would like to ask you to tell me the specific location so that I can start searching from there. How could Elder Son not know what he was thinking? However, Lord Chu Ning, we are all very sad that something happened to Lu Yu. It is normal for you to want to look for her. However, at that time, she was swallowed by the black whirlpool created by the black flying python. Chu Ning's face became paler. His body swayed, and he almost fell down. He knew about the black heaven-swallowing python. Once one was sucked into it, it would be difficult to find his corpse. Elder Son hurriedly supported him and closed his eyes. So, even if you go, I am afraid it will be in vain. Our academy has an unshirkable responsibility for this matter. Please tell me the location. I will look for her. Chu Ning slowly pushed his hand away and said firmly. Chu! Elder Son wanted to persuade him again, but when he saw Chu Ning's expression, he couldn't bear it. He took a deep breath and said, Lord Chu Ning, to tell you the truth, I felt uneasy on the way back with the academy students, so I went back to Wanling Mountain once. Chu Ning was stunned. Elder Son paused and recalled the scene that time. He was still shocked. The entire Wanling Mountain was washed with blood. All the magical beasts had been killed. The river that spread out from the forest was completely dyed red with blood. Countless fiends' corpses floated on the river. That scene was really purgatory on earth. Wanling Mountain, which was originally bustling with life, became silent. Only the bloody smell that filled the sky made one's heart tremble. This was most likely caused by the high-level fiend that appeared that day. However, Elder Son looked around and couldn't find any trace of it. Under such circumstances, it would be difficult to find any traces of them when they were alive, let alone find Chu Luyue. Chu Ning looked defeated and was silent for a long time. But in the end, he still stubbornly said, this time, I must go. No matter whether he could find her or not, he must go. My Yu is most afraid of being alone. I will bring her. He turned around stiffly. After taking a step, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground, unconscious. Let's go home. For mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 154. Elder Son got someone to send Chu Ning home and hired someone to take care of him in case anything happened to him. He could understand Chu Ning's feelings, but he did not know what would happen if he went out alone in his current state. How could he not be sad? Back then, he thought highly of Chu Luyue and even wanted to take him in as his disciple. If Uncle Master did not beat him to it, he might really be his master now. Elder Son felt bitter seeing such an outstanding genius fall with his own eyes, but he could not do anything about it. After sending Chu Ning away, Elder Son locked himself in the house and did not come out for a long time. The dying Chu Yen was sent back to the Chu family, but it did not cause much of a stir. Instead, many people laughed at him. Ever since Chu Luyue came to make a scene and took away a large portion of the Chu family's assets, everyone in the Chu family hated Chu Yen and Lu Yao to the core. Of these two people, one used his identity as the third young master to abuse his power, while the other took advantage of the fact that he was in charge of the Chu family's finances and pocketed almost all of the Chu family's assets. If it were not for the fact that the Chu family did not want the two of them to fill this hole, the Chu family would not have tolerated them. Besides, Chu Xianmin was just a concubine in Crown Prince Mansion. She could not do anything, so they were even more unscrupulous. Who would still put them in their eyes? The servant reported the news to First Elder, but he only sneered in return. He dug his own grave by provoking Chu Ning. Who can he blame? With Chu Luyue dead, the Chu family could finally vent their anger. Who would not be secretly happy? However, out of so many people, only the brainless Chu Yen went straight to Chu Ning. No matter what, Chu Ning was already a stage 5 warrior and was not to be trifled with. Only a stupid person would go against Chu Ning directly. First Elder, as the Imperial Guard's commander-in-chief, Chu Ning beat Third Master half to death. This is not appropriate. Should we report this to His Majesty? First Elder's mouth twitched. He's stupid, but all of you are stupid as well. Chu Luiyue just died, and Chu Ning is devastated. Why would His Majesty pursue this matter at this time? Besides, it was Chu Ning who provoked him first. So many people were present at that time, and they clearly heard his **t. Even if we report this to His Majesty, we will not be in the right. Rather than this, we might as well deal with this matter quietly. First Elder is right. If he could ruthlessly trample on him at this time, that would be called venting his anger. There's no need for us to do anything. Chu Ning won't be able to hold on. Only Chu Ning is left. Can't he slowly deal with him in the future? Pity. Chu Luiyue died so easily outside. She really got off easy. First Elder muttered in a low voice. Only by personally dealing with Chu Luiyue can the hatred in his heart be quenched. Has there been any news from the Crown Prince? Why is His Majesty so cold to the Crown Prince these days? First Elder pondered for a moment and changed the topic. The palace has a tight lockdown on information. We have investigated in private, but we couldn't get any information. However, there is one thing that is a bit strange. The Crown Prince was urgently summoned to the palace on the night of his wedding with the third miss. No one knows what His Majesty said to him, but after he came out, the Crown Prince returned to his residence and never came out. Before that, His Highness Third Prince entered the palace. This matter is related to His Highness Third Prince. Not necessarily. But His Highness Third Prince is currently being held in the capital by His Majesty and has yet to return to the Northwest Army. First Elder's brows wrinkled. A few days ago, he personally sent a letter but was rejected. It can be seen that the Crown Prince's situation is worse than expected. Vaguely, he felt that the Crown Prince's position is in danger. But they have always been on good terms with the Crown Prince. They are already in the same boat. At this time, it would be wishful thinking to seek refuge with another prince. Therefore, they must find a way to help the Crown Prince out of his current predicament. Mu Hongyu was unconscious for an entire day and night. When she woke up, she sat on the bed in a daze. Her whole body seemed to have been drained of all strength. Her mind seemed to be blank, but everything that happened in Wanling Mountain kept replaying in her mind. All the scenes were clearly replayed over and over again, making her extremely uncomfortable. If they stopped Lu Yu at that time, then everything that happened later wouldn't have happened. They were the ones who thought they were lucky, and they were too relaxed. No matter how strong Lu Yu is, she is just a student like them. She even entered the school half a year later than them. How could they let her face a magical beast of the 7th rank alone? That's a very powerful being. Even the elders in the school might not be its match, let alone Lu Yu. Mu Hongyu thought in a daze as tears fell silently. Then, she slapped herself harshly. Slap. The crisp sound of the slap was particularly clear in the quiet room. Her face was burning with pain, but it was nothing compared to the self-blame and guilt in her heart. Wu, the golden mane bear cub, felt the heavy sadness from her body and seemed to be infected. It crawled over and hugged her arm as it whimpered softly. Mu Hongyu buried her head in her arms and sobbed silently. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. Mu Hongyu hurriedly looked up, wiped the tears on her face, and dragged her tired and painful body to open the door. Who is it? When she saw the face of the person outside the door, Mu Hongyu's face immediately turned cold. She did not say anything and wanted to close the door. Even if the person was wearing a veil and only revealed a pair of eyes, she could immediately recognize that it was Chu Xianmin. Hey! Wait! Chu Xianmin held the door with one hand and stopped Mu Hongyu's actions. I heard that you were injured, so I came to visit you out of goodwill. Why are you in such a hurry to close the door? Chu Xianmin said as her eyes quickly swept across Mu Hongyu's face, and the corners of her eyes twitched. Mu Hongyu was enraged by her gaze, and her voice was cold. I don't welcome you here. Leave quickly. It won't do you any good to provoke me. Mu Hongyu seemed to smile. You're not my match even when you're at your peak, let alone now that you're injured. This kind of threat is meaningless. What do you want? Mu Hongyu had completely lost her patience. Chu Xianmin suddenly took a step closer. A sinister look flashed across her eyes as she smiled slowly. Chu Luiyue is dead. I heard that you were quite close to her, so I came to visit you. Look at you. She must have died very miserably, right? Chapter 155. You. Upon hearing this, the anger in Mu Hongyu's heart was completely ignited. She raised her hand and slapped Chu Xianmin's face. Chu Xianmin did not back down. She clamped down on Chu Xianmin's hand and pushed it hard. Mu Hongyu's body fell to the ground uncontrollably. The wounds on her body split open again, and blood flowed out, leaving bloodstains on her clothes. She was seriously injured and was at her weakest. She was no match for Chu Xianmin. Chu Xianmin stepped through the door and looked down at her with a mocking gaze. Are you angry? What's there to be angry about? Am I not telling the truth? I heard that Chu Luiyue died in the hands of the black flying python. The entire mountain collapsed. I'm sure there's nothing left of her now, right? Mu Hongyu's chest churned as black shadows flashed across her eyes. You. Get lost. Chu Xianmin chuckled. I came to see you out of goodwill, but you're so against it and even want to chase me away. You really don't know how to appreciate my kindness. However, don't worry. Chu Luiyue harmed me to this extent. I won't let it go so easily. It's a pity that I didn't get to finish her off personally and didn't even see how she died. Since you're so close to her, I'll put this on your head in the future. I'll slowly repay you in the future. As she spoke, she turned around and was about to leave. The golden mane bear cub suddenly chased after her from behind and bit Chu Xianmin's calf harshly. Ah! Chu Xianmin cried out in pain and quickly looked down. When she saw that it was the golden mane bear cub, she was shocked and angry. Get lost! The golden mane bear cub was flung away and fell to the ground. Its body shook, and it spat out a piece of flesh from its mouth that was full of blood. It had actually bitten off a piece of flesh from Chu Xianmin's calf. Chu Xianmin's face was pale from the pain. Her heart trembled as she looked at the bloody wound on her calf. She had finally recovered from her injury, but she was attacked by this little bastard again. Such a deep wound would definitely leave a scar. You're courting death. She suddenly pulled out the sword at her waist and slashed at the golden mane bear cub. The golden mane bear cub looked up at her, and its fur suddenly stood up. His eyes were filled with hostility. When the long sword landed, it actually charged straight at Chu Xianmin. Chu Xianmin's sword barely grazed the little golden mane bear's back. However, the golden mane bear cub was a natural 4th-grade magical beast. Its physical strength was extremely strong, and it dodged quickly. The sword only managed to cut off some of its fur. Not even a single wound was left behind. Bang! The golden mane bear cub slammed its head into Chu Xianmin's stomach, causing her to fall to the ground. The back of Chu Xianmin's head hit the ground hard, and her brain buzzed. She was furious. She kicked the golden mane bear cub away and struggled to get up. She raised her sword and stabbed at the bear cub's exposed abdomen. "Tsong tsong!" Mu Hongyu exclaimed and pounced over. The tip of Chu Xianmin's sword had already reached Mu Hongyu's back. Clang! A rock flew from the side and accurately hit the sword, causing Chu Xianmin's sword to deviate. It narrowly grazed Mu Hongyu's side. Chu Xianmin turned around angrily. "Who dares?" The moment she spoke, she stopped as if someone was strangling her. The person who came was Mr. Wen Yan. He quickly went forward and helped Mu Hongyu up. After making sure that she was fine, he looked at Chu Xianmin again with an ugly expression. "Chu Xianmin, what are you doing?" He originally wanted to see how Mu Hongyu was recovering, but he did not expect to see Chu Xianmin standing at the door from afar with a sword in her hand. When he got closer, he clearly saw Chu Xianmin attacking Mu Hongyu. "This is the academy. Are you crazy? How dare you attack your own classmate?" Chu Xianmin knew that something was wrong. The door was not closed, and Mr. Wen Yan must have seen it clearly. She hurriedly tried to defend herself. "Mr. Wen Yan, listen to me. It's not what you think. I just wanted to visit Mu Hongyu. Her fiend attacked me first, and I fought back to protect myself." Wen Yan did not believe a single word of this explanation. "Cut the crap. When did your relationship with Mu Hongyu become so good?" Chu Xianmin secretly bit her lip. "Mr. Wen Yan, I'm telling the truth. Look if you don't believe me. This is the wound it left on me." Chu Xianmin pointed at her calf as she spoke. Wen Yan frowned and looked over. Indeed, a piece of flesh had been forcefully torn off. He turned around and glanced at Mu Hongyu and the golden mane bear cub. The golden mane bear cub was still vigilant as it stared at Chu Xianmin. Wen Yan shook his head and said with disappointment, "Fiends are very sensitive. Magical beasts are the most sensitive, especially young ones. The reason why it's so wary of you is obviously because it has sensed your hostility. Mu Hongyu is its master. Do you want me to continue asking why it's treating you like this?" Chu Xianmin was a little flustered. "Mr. Wen Yan, all right. You're also injured now, so we're barely even. I won't pursue this any further. Quickly go back and recuperate. Don't let this happen again in the future." Wen Yan interrupted her and looked a little impatient. "Yes." Chu Xianmin knew that there was no point in continuing to argue. She could only clench her teeth and swallow her anger as she turned around and limped away. Wen Yan looked at her back view for a long time and sighed. Chu Xianmin used to be smart and hardworking. How did she become like this? Mu Hongyu hugged the golden mane bear cub and patted it for a while. It finally recovered from its previous state and lay in Mu Hongyu's arms softly. Wen Yan turned around and saw that she was in a daze with red eyes. He did not know how to comfort her. He took out a letter from his sleeve. "Hongyu, your father, Prince Ping Jiang, wrote a letter." Chu Xianmin returned to her residence and treated her wound. However, the more she thought about it, the angrier she became. When Chu Luiyue was still alive, he caused her to suffer a crushing defeat. Not only did he disfigure her, but he also forced her to marry into the crown prince mansion as a concubine. She could not lift her head up until now. Now that she was dead, he was still haunting her. She could not take this lying down. After thinking for a while, she suddenly stood up and walked toward Peach Garden. In Peach Garden, Ling Zhu was dealing with the compensation for the injured students when he heard the news of Chu Xianmin's arrival. He put down the things in his hands and walked to the courtyard. He immediately saw Chu Xianmin, who was waiting there. "Xianmin, why are you here?" Ling Zhu used to admire Chu Xianmin a lot. Even though he vaguely felt that she had changed after she returned, he did not pay much attention to it. It was normal for her to change after what happened previously. Chu Xianmin glanced inside without batting an eyelid. Mr. Ling Zhu, is elder son here? There's something I want to report. Ling Zhu shook his head. Elder son is busy right now. I'm afraid he doesn't have time to see you. You can tell me anything. I'll pass it on to elder son later. Chu Xianmin hesitated for a while but still spoke. Mr. Ling Zhu, the Tianling dynasty's envoy seems to be coming soon. Ling Zhu was stunned, and his expression became much more serious. Yes, why are you suddenly asking about this? Chu Xianmin paused and seemed to hesitate. Sister's accident was too sudden. However, since the matter has been decided, it's not appropriate to go back on it at the last minute. I wonder if old son plans to send someone else up. Love Network has a better reading experience than this. Chapter 156. Ling Zhu never expected that Chu Xianmin would come here immediately to talk about this matter before Chu Liyue's body had even turned cold. Even if Chu Liyue had severed ties with the Chu family, they still had the same blood flowing in their veins. How could Chu Xianmin say all this without changing her expression? Wasn't she stepping on Chu Liyue's dead body? Ling Zhu's expression was a little stiff. Xianmin, did you look for elder son just to talk about this? Chu Xianmin also noticed that his expression was a little off. She lowered her eyes and made a sorrowful expression. Teacher Ling Zhu, I know it's not appropriate to say this now, but the dead can't be brought back to life. As the living, we should do what we should do. The Tianling dynasty is such a powerful existence. If we don't deal with this properly, this is not something you should worry about. You should go back and rest first. Ling Zhu looked at Chu Xianmin's sorrowful expression and felt nauseous. If Chu Xianmin cared about Chu Liyue even a little, she would never do such a thing. Since she could say it, why did she have to be so pretentious? Chu Xianmin did not notice Ling Zhu's gaze and asked hesitantly, Then, this matter, I'll discuss it with elder son when he's free. Ling Zhu averted his gaze. Chu Xianmin was then relieved. Okay, I'll go back first. Please continue with your work. She then turned around and left. Walking out of Peach Garden, Chu Xianmin's lips curled up under her veil. Chu Liyue was already dead, and the academy would definitely find someone to replace him. Naturally, she was the most suitable person as the second in rank. The Tianling dynasty was a powerful existence that only existed in legends. If she could use this opportunity to build a relationship with them, she would not have to worry about not being able to achieve great things in the future. Now, everyone said that she was down and out and no longer had her former glory. Even the servants in Crown Prince Mansion dared to treat her badly. When she made a comeback, she would see how those people would continue to mock her. Ling Zhu watched Chu Xianmin leave. When her figure completely disappeared, he finally let out a long sigh and rubbed between his brows. Other than anger, there was also confusion in his heart. When did Chu Xianmin become like this? Or had he misjudged her from the very beginning? After settling this matter, Chu Xianmin wanted to go back and have a good rest. However, before she could reach her residence, the Chu family sent someone to inform her that Chu Yan had been beaten half to death by Chu Ning. Lu Ya wanted her to go back quickly. Chu Xianmin was shocked, but she did not care about her injury. She applied for leave from the teacher and returned to the Chu family. Chu Xianmin had mixed feelings when she walked to the Chu family's door again. She did not want to go in for a moment. Ever since she married into the Crown Prince's residence, she had not returned to the Chu family. At that time, she had been coldly married off. It could be said that she had lost all the faith she had accumulated over the past 10 years. Originally, she had wanted to wait until her days in the Crown Prince's residence were better before returning. However, the Crown Prince had shut himself in his study these days. It was difficult to even see him once, let alone talk about other things. While she was hesitating, the servant in front of the gate had already seen her and said in a strange tone, "Oh, I was wondering who it was. So it's third miss. You don't look well. Could it be that you're having a hard time in the Crown Prince's mansion?" Chu Xianmin felt even more humiliated. However, if she did not go in, it would seem that she was afraid. She took a deep breath and didn't say a word as she walked in without looking sideways. After she left, the servants at the gate looked at each other and laughed in unison. Chu Xianmin dug her nails deep into her palms to suppress the anger in her heart. Along the way, the servants who passed by all mocked and ridiculed her when they saw her. They did not take her seriously at all. When Chu Xianmin finally reached Chu Yan and Lu Yao's residence, her palms were already bleeding from the clenched fists. Lu Yao was standing outside the door. When she saw her, she hurriedly walked over. "Minmin, you have to save your father." Chu Xianmin took a deep breath and walked into the house. "How is father now?" Lu Yao wiped the corners of her eyes and said resentfully. "It's all because of that Chu Ning. He actually beat your father up like that on the streets. If he hadn't been treated in time, I'm afraid." Chu Xianmin walked into the house and saw that Chu Yan was still unconscious. His face was bruised and swollen, and there was almost no part of his body that was unharmed. One could imagine how ruthless Chu Ning was. How did father get hurt like this? Didn't the residents invite anyone to come and take a look? Lu Yao sighed helplessly. "Ever since Chu Luiyue came and caused a ruckus, your father's and my status in the residence plummeted, and we became a thorn in everyone's side. They couldn't be happier that your father was beaten up. Why would they help get someone to come and take a look? Most of the money under your father's and my name has been taken away by them. What's left is not enough to invite those famous doctors. We can only drag it on like this. Minmin, I asked you to come back this time to ask if you have any way to help." At the mention of this, Chu Xianmin was also very frustrated. Wasn't this part of the reason why the Chu family treated her like this? What can I do? I'm already in a difficult enough situation myself. How can I help you? Besides, the Crown Prince has been staying in the study. I can't even see him, let alone ask the Crown Prince for help. Lu Yao was also anxious. Then what should we do? Are we just going to watch your father suffer like this? Chu Xianmin was silent for a while before she finally said, "Forget it. Don't be anxious now. I'll think of a way to raise some money for you to hire a better doctor for my father first. I'll think of a way to deal with the Crown Prince. After this period of time, the Tianling dynasty's people will come, and it will be our day to shine." Lu Yao was confused. What? Where did this come from? Chu Xianmin touched the veil on her face. Chu Luiyue is dead. I'll take her place and meet the Tianling dynasty's envoy. As long as I meet him, I'll have a chance to make a comeback. Lu Yao's eyes lit up. Why didn't she think of that? When Chu Xianmin returned to Crown Prince Mansion, it was already night time. She went straight to the study and wanted to see the Crown Prince. As expected, she was rejected again. However, she did not go back directly this time. Instead, she was very persistent. "Your Highness, I know that you've been troubled recently, so I'm here to help you. Please meet me. If you don't think it's possible, I won't disturb you again in the future." After saying that, she waited quietly. After some time, Rong Jin's voice was finally heard. "Let her in. Let her in." A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 157. Chu Residence. Chu Ning was unconscious for a day. He only woke up the next morning. He opened his eyes and took a while to recognize that he was in his own house. No, wasn't he at Tianlu Academy discussing with elder son about going to Wanling Mountain to find you, Why was he back home in the blink of an eye? He struggled to get up but knocked over the teacup beside the bed. Hearing the commotion, the person waiting outside hurriedly came in. Lord Chu Ning, you're awake. Chu Ning looked blankly at the man who came in. You are, I'm a teacher at Tianlu Academy, Xianshi. Elder son asked me to send you back. Now that you're awake, I can go back without worry. After guarding outside for a night, Xianshi looked a little haggard, but his eyes were full of sincerity. You were too anxious, so you suddenly fainted yesterday. It's not a big deal. You just need to rest for 2 days, and you'll recover. Chu Ning finally reacted. Thank you. Xianshi hurriedly shook his head. You're welcome. We're all worried about your health. Please take care. Since you're fine now, I'll take my leave first. Chu Ning nodded. Xianshi saw that he seemed to have calmed down, and he felt relieved. He reminded him a few more times before turning to leave. Chu Ning, who was sitting in the room, heard the sound of the door opening and closing clearly. His eyes were empty like a bottomless abyss. After a while, he finally got up and walked out with stiff and heavy steps. Not long after Xianshi walked out, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned around and saw Chu Ning walking out as well. He was expressionless, and his whole body emitted a cold aura. Xianshi walked back quickly. Lord Chu Ning, why are you out so soon? You need to have a good rest. Chu Ning pushed away his hand that was about to support him and said word by word, I'm going to find you, I've already been delayed for an entire night yesterday. I can't be late again today. I have to go quickly. Xianshi was helpless. Given Chu Ning's current state, people might even believe that he had gone mad. How could he let him go to Wanling Mountain alone? He tried to pull him back but failed. He could only run in front of Chu Ning and block his way. Please listen to my advice. Lord Chu Ning, no matter what you want to do, you should first take care of your body, right? Now that you're like this, what if something happens? Chu Ning walked around him and stubbornly walked forward. I must go, I must go. At this moment, a young girl's clear voice suddenly came from behind. Father, where are you going? Chu Ning's body trembled. He couldn't be more familiar with this voice. But, could it be that he missed you, or too much that he was hearing things? Father. The voice was right behind him. Chu Ning wanted to turn around immediately, but his body was extremely stiff and he couldn't move at all. Xianshi raised his head and saw a young girl coming from the corner of the Bluestone Road. She was slender and graceful, and her appearance was clear and beautiful. The corners of her mouth held a smile, and her pair of limpid autumn water eyes shimmered with light, and it actually caused everything in the surroundings to lose color in an instant. Who else could it be but the dead Chu Luyue? Xianshi's heart trembled. He opened his mouth and couldn't help but point a finger at her. You're Chu Luyue. Chu Luyue looked at him in confusion. Teacher Xianshi, don't you recognize me? Although she didn't have much contact with this teacher, it seemed that she should recognize him. Xianshi fiercely pinched himself. It was excruciatingly painful. But he immediately rejoiced in his heart. It's really you. It's really you. He excitedly patted Chu Ning's arm. Lord Chu Ning, quickly look. Lu Yu is really back. Quickly look. Chu Ning's ears were buzzing. Chu Luyue finally sensed that something was wrong. She quickly walked forward. Father, what's wrong? Xianshi hurriedly explained. You don't know. Everyone thought that you had. Lord Chu Ning said that he wanted to go to Wanling Mountain to find you. I didn't expect that you would come back like this. That's great. Chu Luiyue suddenly understood. That's right. In that situation, no one would think that she could come back alive. It turned out that the place that father insisted on going to was Wanling Mountain. When everyone thought that she was dead, her father still wanted to look for her. Chu Luiyue's nose twitched. Her heart was filled with guilt. She reached out and hugged Chu Ning's arm. Father, you is back. His arm, which was touched by her, instantly melted like the spring water. The stiff and cold feeling instantly dissipated. It became warm and soft, and then quickly spread. Chu Ning's body could finally move. He slowly turned his head and finally saw the face that he thought he would never see again. Chu Luiyue was shocked when she saw his appearance. In just a few days, the originally clean and handsome Chu Ning seemed to have changed into another person. His face was unshaven, his eyes were dark green, and his eyes were bloodshot. Especially between his brows, there was a trace of gray and dispirited aura that was faintly discernible. His entire person was like a walking corpse that had lost its soul. Her eyes instantly turned red. Father, I'm sorry. You came back late. Chu Ning looked at her without blinking. He held her hand tightly as if he was afraid that she would disappear again. His voice almost broke Chu Luiyue's heart. She held back her tears. Father, let's go home first. Yes. Let's go home. Chu Ning finally came back to life. Let's go home. Xan Shi was also very happy at the side. Lord Chu Ning, Lu Yu, you two go home first. I'll go back to the academy and tell Elder Sun and the rest that you're back. They've been worried sick these few days. After that, he turned around and left quickly. Xan Shi actually admired Chu Luiyue very much. Now that he saw that she had returned safely, he was also very happy. He couldn't hide the smile on his face. When they reached the academy, many people were curious when they saw his energetic and smiling face. Not long after, they bumped into Bai Qin. Bai Qin asked curiously, Xan Shi, didn't Elder Sun send you to take care of Lord Chu Ning? Now that you're back, is Lord Chu Ning better? Xan Shi chuckled. Of course. Not only is he better, but he's completely recovered. Where's Elder Sun? I have something important to tell him immediately. Bai Qin looked at him and found it very strange. Are you serious? Lord Chu Ning was heartbroken yesterday. Why is he completely recovered now? Elder Sun is still busy. What's so important that you have to tell him so urgently? Xan Shi patted his chest. Ha! I won't hide it from you. Anyway, the whole Imperial city will know about this very soon. Chu Luiyue. She's back alive. Chu Xianmin, who had just walked in, suddenly stopped in her tracks as if she was struck by lightning. She looked up in disbelief. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 158. Bai Qin was shocked. What did you say? I said, Chu Luiyue isn't dead. She's still alive. She even came back to the Imperial city this morning. She's accompanying Lord Chu Ning at home. Xan Shi repeated his words with confidence. Elder Sun has been blaming himself for this for the past 2 days. I'll go tell him the good news now. Then, he laughed and was about to leave. Bai Qin hurriedly pulled him back and asked in disbelief, is what you said true? Elder Sun clearly said that little Lu Yu was swallowed by the black flying python's black whirlpool. Logically speaking, she should have died. How could she still be alive? Sigh, actually, I find this strange too. However, she was standing in front of me just now. I have no choice but to believe it. Bai Chen, if you still don't believe me, why don't you go and see for yourself? However, the father and daughter are finally reunited. I think it's not too late to wait until she takes care of Lord Chu Ning and returns to the academy. Okay, I won't talk to you anymore. I'll go and find elder son. Xianxue walked away quickly after he finished speaking. Bai Chen hesitated for a moment but did not want to disturb them at this time. He had seen Chu Ning's state the day before. The father and daughter probably had a lot to talk about. He should wait here patiently. Hey, Xianxue, wait for me. I'll go too. Bai Chen shouted and quickly caught up with Xianxue's footsteps. He wanted to listen carefully and find out what was going on. The two of them left for a while, but Chu Xianmin, who was standing at the door, still could not react. Chu Luiyue is still alive. How is this possible? Elder Sun had clearly said that she had already died in the hands of the black-winged heaven-devouring python. Why had she returned now? This is ridiculous. This sounded like a fantasy story, but teacher Xianxue had no reason to lie. Judging from his expression, it was obvious that he had confirmed it. However, if Chu Luiyue really came back alive, then, what should I do? Chu Xianmin's face turned pale at this thought. Last night, she finally got the chance to meet the Crown Prince. She told the Crown Prince that she could replace Chu Luiyue as the #1 warrior and meet with the envoy of the Tianling dynasty. As long as he grasped this opportunity, there was still hope. He might even be able to improve the Crown Prince's situation. Although she did not know what had happened, she vaguely guessed that the Crown Prince had been punished by His Majesty. If he wanted to help the Crown Prince, he needed someone important to speak up for him. The Crown Prince had clearly thought of this and treated her much better. Not only did he allow her to move to Wudong Garden, which was closer and better to his residence, he also gave orders to reward her with many things. The servants of the Crown Prince's residence were the best at adapting to the situation. When she left the residence in the morning, they changed their previous disrespect and became much more attentive. She had just asked someone to invite a doctor to treat her father, thinking that all the problems would be solved. But now, she forced herself to walk forward, but as soon as she took a step, she realized that her legs were weak and she fell to the ground. The news of Chu Luiyue coming back alive from Wanling Mountain spread quickly in the college and then to the entire capital city. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Some were shocked, some were happy, and some were angry. For a moment, some were happy, and some were sad. Many people wanted to find out what had happened, but Chu Luiyue stayed at home to take care of Chu Ning. He did not even leave the house for the whole day. Her heart ached for Chu Ning to be so haggard because of her. She threw everything else to the back of her mind and took good care of him. She also took the time to rest. Chu Luiyue's return put Chu Ning and the rest at ease, but some others were stunned. The Chu family. After the doctor Chu Xianmin sent for left, Chu Yan woke up and saw Lu Yao beside him with a gloomy face. He was about to get up, but he realized that he could not move at all. He then remembered that he had been beaten up by Chu Ning the day before. His mood immediately became irritable and gloomy. You! Who are you showing your gloomy face to? The couple had not had a good time in the Chu family recently. Chu Luiyue's incident had directly exposed the two of them, especially Lu Yao. She had been embezzling for so many years. Now that she had been found out, the rest of the Chu family would not let her off easily when they realized that their interests had been harmed. In addition, they did not have the Crown Prince's support now, so they were naturally even more unscrupulous. Lu Yao's right to manage the company was taken away. Even the shops under Chu Yan's name were all taken back. On the surface, he was still the Chu family's third young master, but he no longer had the right to speak. Those people who used to curry favor with him had now changed their attitude and were hitting him when he was down. Even now, no one came to take a look at him when he was beaten up like this. Lu Yao glanced at him and frowned. Do you know that Chu Luiyue is still alive? Chu Yan was stunned. What nonsense are you talking about? She came back this morning. The whole Imperial city knows about it now. She didn't die in Wanling Mountain. Lu Yao knew better than Chu Yan how serious this matter was. Min Min's plan was completely ruined. No, we can't just sit here and wait for death. Lu Yao got up and paced back and forth in the room. Suddenly, a light flashed across her heart. Wait. Chu Luiyue came back alive. Then, what about Gu Mingzhu? She quickly walked to the side and started writing a letter. Chu Yan was even more confused. What are you doing? Lu Yao did not even look up. Writing a letter to Madame Gu. What time is it now? You still have the mood to do this kind of thing? Chu Yan was fuming with anger. However, Lu Yao smiled. It's better to do this now. Rumor has it that Chu Luiyue and Gu Mingzhu died together. But now that Chu Luiyue is back, there is no news of Gu Mingzhu. Obviously, she is really dead. Is there nothing wrong with this? Chu Yan was stunned for a moment before he quickly understood. You mean, Lu Yao's lips curled into a sinister smile. So what if she came back alive? There are many people in the Imperial city who want her life. That night, the letter was sent to the Gu family. The next day, Chu Luiyue saw that Chu Ning had recovered a lot. She was relieved and went to the academy. But just as she reached the entrance of the academy, she was stopped. Chu Luiyue. Stop right there. She looked back and saw a woman in her 30s walking over quickly with a group of people. She was dressed in white, and her eyes were red. She looked sad and angry. Seeing Chu Luiyue's face, she immediately became agitated and wailed. Give me back my daughter's life. Digression, I couldn't sleep yesterday. Sob, 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 sob. A better reading experience comes from love. Chapter 159. Her voice was sharp and piercing, causing Chu Luiyue to frown. Who are you? When the woman heard this, she seemed to be even more agitated. She immediately rushed forward and slapped Chu Luiyue. You still have the cheek to ask who I am. I'll kill you. Chu Luiyue sidestepped and dodged her attack. The woman lost her balance and almost fell to the ground. Fortunately, the people behind her quickly caught her. Madam, you have to be careful. The woman was even angrier. She pointed at Chu Luiyue and said sternly, Go. Capture her. Yes. When the people heard this order, they immediately went forward and surrounded Chu Luiyue, intending to take action. Chu Luiyue's expression did not change, but his voice was much colder. He sounded imposing without being angry. This is Tianlu Academy. Let's see who has the guts to cause trouble here. This sentence successfully made the people stop in their tracks and feel uneasy. That's right. No matter what, this was Tianlu Academy's entrance. If they really did something overboard here, Tianlu Academy would not let them off. However, the woman did not seem to hear Chu Luiyue's words at all. Her voice rose an octave. Why are you still standing there? Take her down right now. If the Gu family wants to capture someone, who dares to stop us? The Gu family. Chu Luiyue's mind raced. He finally remembered this woman's identity. She was the wife of the head of the Gu family, Gu Yunfei. She was the mistress of the Gu family, Yu Zhenling. The original owner of the body had only seen this woman once, and it had been a few years ago. When Chu Luiyue saw her, he only felt that she looked familiar. However, he did not remember anything. However, since she was so arrogant and kept saying, "My Gu family," it was not difficult for people to guess who she was. Chu Luiyue finally understood what she meant when she said those words at the beginning. This was because Yu Xinling was Gu Mingzhu's biological mother. "Oh, it's Madame Gu. I don't seem to have any dealings with your Gu family, and I haven't done anything wrong to you, have I? I wonder why you've mustered such a large force to capture me." Yu Xinling was so angry that she laughed. She looked at Chu Luiyue with resentment in her eyes. "You still have the nerve to say that? You know best what you've done." Chu Luiyue's expression did not change. "I really don't know. Why don't you explain it to me first?" Yu Xinling was so angry that her whole body trembled. "You! What's going on? Why are you making so much noise so early in the morning?" Just as the two sides were in a deadlock, someone walked out from the academy's gate. Chu Luiyue turned around to take a look. Teacher Bai Chen. When Bai Chen saw Chu Luiyue, her heart skipped a beat. Even though he had already heard the news yesterday, seeing it with his own eyes still made him excited. "Little Lu Yu. It's really you." He quickly walked up to Chu Luiyue and looked at her carefully. You're really fine." Chu Luiyue's lips curled up slightly. "Yes, I'm fine. Don't worry." Good. It's good that you're back. It's good that you're back." Bai Chen's emotions were in turmoil. He had a lot to say, but only this sentence was left. He kept repeating it over and over again. He heard that there was a commotion outside the academy, so he wanted to come and take a look. He did not expect it to be Chu Luiyue. His heart, which had been restless all night, could finally be at ease. When his emotions had calmed down a little, he looked around and his expression suddenly became a little bad. These people seemed to want to make a move on Lu Yu. His gaze finally fell on Yu Xinling. "Mrs. Gu, why are you here?" Yu Xinling took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in her heart. She said coldly, "Teacher Bai Chen, this is between the Gu family and Chu Luiyue. You'd better stay out of it." Bai Chen was amused. "Mrs. Gu, what are you saying? Lu Yu is a student of Tianlu Academy. If you want to take her away now, don't we even have the right to ask?" Yu Xinling was not a fool. She could immediately tell that Bai Chen was on Chu Luiyue's side. The Gu family was respected, but Tianlu Academy was not to be trifled with. If Bai Chen was determined to protect Chu Luiyue, then she really could not take Chu Luiyue away by force. "Why don't you ask Chu Luiyue this question instead of me?" Bai Chen looked at Chu Luiyue questioningly. Chu Luiyue shrugged. "I don't know what happened either. When I walked to the academy's entrance, Mrs. Gu rushed over with her people and wanted to take me away without saying anything. She even said that she wanted me to pay for her daughter's life." When Bai Chen heard this, he suddenly understood something and looked at Yu Xinling suspiciously. "Mrs. Gu, are you saying that Lu Yu killed your daughter, Gu Mingzhu?" "That's right." When she heard her daughter's name, Yu Xinling's emotions, which had just calmed down, became agitated again. Tears gushed out crazily. "It's her. She killed my only daughter." Bai Chen's expression became a little strange. "Mrs. Gu, this involves a life. You can't speak carelessly. I understand your grief over losing your daughter, but the situation at Wanling Mountain was chaotic. Even we didn't know what happened. How can you be so sure that it was Lu Yu who killed your daughter?" "Of course, I'm sure. I've already asked around." Back then, Mingzhu and Chu Luiyue were trapped on a mountain together. They were besieged by the black flying python and countless fiends. Under such circumstances, why did Mingzhu die and only Chu Luyue come back safely? She must have done something. Yuzhenling shouted confidently and angrily as if she had seen it with her own eyes. Bai Qin didn't think much of it. He even found it a little ridiculous. So, just because Lu Yu came back alive alone, you're certain that she killed Gu Mingzhu and wanted her dead? Yuzhenling rebuked coldly. Isn't that enough? Otherwise, why don't you ask her to personally explain how she managed to escape alone under that kind of situation? If Chu Luyue was also dead, she would have nothing to say. She could only admit that she was unlucky. But now, Chu Luyue was standing here, safe and sound, while her daughter's corpse was nowhere to be found. How could she not hate her? Bai Qin was speechless. Do you have any evidence for what you said? If you don't have evidence, it's slander. Yuzhenling was stunned. For a moment, she didn't know how to respond and seemed a little guilty. Chu Luyue gently rubbed between her eyebrows and said calmly, "There's no evidence or evidence. Just based on your own imagination, you're sure that I'm guilty and even want to take me away. Madame Gu, aren't you being too unreasonable?" Yuzhenling was rendered speechless by the two of them. Her face, which was originally red from crying, quickly turned pale. But she had seen much of the world, and the Jiao quickly defended herself. She quickly said, "Then explain yourself clearly. What exactly happened at that time? Why are you the only one who came back safely? If you already had the means to escape, why didn't you help Mingzhu?" You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.